Chapter 261 Exciting. Boom. At this moment, Sarah finally couldn't help it, and kicked the bed with her foot fiercely, making a thumping sound. Naruto's body shook together, and the next moment, Sarah's body got out from under the bed and appeared in front of them, Yuhi staring at them with red ears. Yeah, Makoto never thought that such a thing would happen. The moment she saw Sarah, she exclaimed suddenly, and immediately picked up the kimono on the ground to cover the sensitive parts of her body. Standing still in the same place, bewildered. Sarah, why are you here? Makoto raised Yuhi's face. At this moment, she was just being found out. She felt an indescribable sense of shame in her heart, and she felt ashamed. And Sarah is actually very shy. Looking at Makoto's perfect naked body, and comparing her with herself, it was immediately obvious that her body was more mature and bumpy than her own. No wonder Naruto couldn't stand such a body. The next moment, Sarah opened the door and ran out with a face full of Yuhi. After being stunned for a few seconds, Makoto hurriedly put on his clothes and ran after him. Naruto was left alone to sit on the edge of the bed, looking at the tent propped up high under him, shaking his head and sighing bitterly. But when I remembered the feeling of holding Makoto towering in my hand just now, my heart suddenly became hot, and the ashes in my heart couldn't be dissipated for a long time. With a sigh, Naruto had no choice but to lie on the bed and close his eyes to gradually calm his mind, regardless of what happened after the two of Makoto ran out. However, just when Naruto had quelled the evil fire, the door was pulled open again. At this moment, two delicate figures appeared at the door together. Why are you back again? Naruto said with an embarrassed expression. I saw the two of them with slightly Yuhi faces, walked in with their heads down and silently walked in, closed the door and locked it, and then quickly rushed to Naruto's bed, and suddenly the two of them rushed into his arms. What's wrong? Naruto was slightly surprised. But Makoto said softly, Naruto, are you feeling bad now? Sarah also said tiredly, can we help you? Boom. At this moment, Naruto's mind was as if it had been blown up, and a hot blood rushed to his brain, almost spitting out of his nostrils. You guys, what are you talking about? Naruto looked at the two girls with wide eyes, his eyes full of incredible. Makoto chuckled and suddenly reached out to hold the tall bulge under Naruto. The soft touch of that small hand made Naruto feel a gentleness even through his pants, and he couldn't help but grow even bigger. Not to be outdone, Sarah stretched out her little hand to hold it, and gently tugged it with Makoto. Hey, this. Naruto was shocked, he didn't expect them to be so messed up. This made him unable to react for a while, and could only be dumbfounded by the two of them under him. Naruto, I've discussed with Sarah, and I'll take care of you today. Makoto pressed his lips together and whispered in his ear. Sarah shivered a little shyly, but she still mustered up her courage and nodded, me too. Naruto, I want to make you feel very comfortable with Makoto's sister, so that you can forget your past troubles and worries, so please accept us. Naruto. After speaking, she took the initiative to remove the clothes on her body, put the jade and breasts on her chest into Naruto's hands, and her sweet buttocks twisted slightly. Makoto, on the other hand, turned around and buried his head between Naruto's legs, unzipping Naruto's pants. That night, Naruto enjoyed enough excitement and tenderness. Maybe it was because Makoto drank alcohol, but she seemed to have turned into a kinky that night. Baby, swing, woman, she is very bold. Although she is also a young child, she did not refuse all kinds of embarrassing poses, which made Sarah on the side completely unbearable. It was not until Naruto put her tossed to the ground until she was tired. Pull over. However, compared to Makoto, Sarah appears to be much more conservative. Although she and Makoto did enough temptation at the beginning, when it came to the real gun action, she was not as bold as Makoto. She shrank and only pressed Naruto up. Naruto also saw Sarah's nervousness and shyness, so he was extremely gentle. It wasn't until the end that he let both women fall asleep. Early in the morning, a scream suddenly sounded from Naruto's bed. Ah, Naruto, what's going on? A harsh scream rang out. It was Makoto. Sarah opened her eyes in a daze, and saw Makoto was naked, lying on Naruto's chest with her upper body naked, with her hands on his face and screaming in shock. She couldn't help muttering, "Makoto sister, it wasn't you who encouraged me last night. Did you come here?" Makoto suddenly recalled that he drank a few glasses of wine last night because he was going back to face his father and his engagement, and then he wanted to sit at Naruto's place by ghosts and gods. A series of ridiculous things happened. Moreover, she remembered that she was smashed by Sarah at that time, but at that time, her mind was blank, and she suddenly became cruel, chased out and dragged Sarah to persuade her to serve Naruto with herself. Under Makoto's perseverance and coercion, although Sarah was very shy and reluctant, she agreed with her in a hot-headed manner. In fact, she originally wanted to comfort Naruto. If she gave up easily because of Makoto's presence, she would be even more unwilling. Naruto, this. After thinking about everything, Makoto was simply ashamed, wishing he could find a hole to burrow in. He didn't expect him to be so kinky. Swing. How so? Don't you just drink some wine? How could such a thing happen? With a soft cry, Makoto quickly buried his head and shoved it into Naruto's arms, but he refused to look up for a long time. Sarah leaned on Naruto's other side. She was naked and gently rubbed Naruto's thigh under the quilt. Seeing Makoto's shy look at this moment, she couldn't help but let out a coquettish smile. I didn't expect Sister Makoto to have a dual personality. She is so serious in normal times, but she is so active after drinking. Naruto was fascinated by her smooth calves, and he couldn't help but stretch out his hand to squeeze her chest, and said with a smile, "Sarah, didn't you do the same last night?" Makoto did this after drinking. Why do you want to come with her? Yuhi with a sullen face and a face full of shame, arguing hesitantly, I was because I was confused at the time. If you two didn't do that behind my back, how could I? Will it be like this? Chapter 262 I am the 6th generation Hokage. Ha ha ha. Naruto couldn't help laughing when she saw Yuhi's frowning expression and eagerly arguing. Last night was indeed a special experience. Even if I had never tried it with Baizuyu and the others before, I didn't expect this time to do it with two girls who had no experience. Naruto was relieved, and the melancholy in his heart was temporarily dispelled a lot. Seeing that Naruto was really happy, the two girls couldn't help but feel annoyed. Naruto, you bastard, wolf. Did you want to do this for a long time? Sarah tapped on his chest. Makoto also opened his mouth and nibbled at his tits. Head. Let Naruto hum in comfort. Okay, you two didn't talk about me, but you still talk about me now. Naruto turned over, and immediately put Sarah under him. His body was slightly erect, and accompanied her a coquettish sound. Moan, began the morning exercise. It wasn't until the sun hit 3 poles that the battle between the three stopped. At this time, the two women could no longer walk, and Yuhi was swollen under him. Konoha by himself, and picked them up at night. The two women are now giving Naruto their whole body, so naturally they nodded obediently and agreed, and both lay on the bed to rest. Naruto, who left Kikyo Castle, went directly to Konoha village. Since the two places were not far from each other, Naruto quickly arrived at the village. And he is not worried about the safety of the two women, because they have their own space markers on their bodies, and he will immediately sense any danger when they encounter it. Also, he went to Konoha alone, and many things were a little easier. At the entrance of the village, before Naruto entered the village, the ninja guarding the door had already discovered his existence. Makoto sent a message to the village yesterday. The village was already preparing for Naruto's arrival. So at this moment Naruto stood at the gate of the village, and suddenly someone flashed out. Taking a closer look, Naruto couldn't help but be surprised. Namikaze Minato. Your own cheap dad. Although at this time he was not married at all. As soon as he appeared, his eyes were fixed on Naruto, and Naruto was also looking at him, and an astonishing momentum broke out between the two. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Minato's face. It really looks like me. Naruto also laughed. Yellow Flash, it lives up to its reputation. The two looked at each other and smiled, and suddenly they shot at the same time. Hiraishin came out without a shot. Shoot at the opponent's face. Swish. Swish. Two golden lights flashed, and Naruto and Minato both appeared in each other's positions. Minato turned his head and said in surprise, "It's really Hiraishin's art." Naruto touched his nose but said nothing. At this time, people kept coming around, surrounded the two, and began to talk. "Look, there are actually two Minatos. Isn't it a clone?" "I don't think so. The one over there seems younger." "Hey, I think his chakra looks so powerful. It's stronger than Minato." Listening to the discussion of the people around, Naruto smiled lightly. "Take me to see the three generations. I have no ill intentions. Makoto must have already told you in the letter, right?" Minato nodded. "Come with me, the third generation is in the Hokage building." Swish twice, the next moment the figures of the two quickly disappeared in place. Inside Hokage's office. The three generations have already assembled a large group of high-level executives to discuss matters. At this time, the scene is extremely serious. Suddenly, he raised his brows slightly. "Come on." Everyone's spirits were slightly shaken. The next moment, two figures flashed. When Naruto appeared in the office, everyone was shocked. Because Naruto looks so much like Minato. However, Naruto was looking at the three generations at this time, and there was a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. If he had not trusted him so much and helped him so much, he would not have been so successful. Three generations of old man, long time no see. He couldn't help but stepped forward and said. The pipe in the mouth of the third generation couldn't help but feel a little confused about Naruto's familiar words for a while. Seeing that everyone around was looking at him with strange expressions, Naruto realized that he had lost his way, touched his nose and smiled. "Everyone in Konoha, this is the first time we meet. Naruto, it's a pleasure to meet you." Naruto. Minato was slightly startled. Isn't this the same name as the protagonist in Teacher Jiraiya's book? And the protagonist of the book is the savior of the world. Is there any connection between the two? Naruto smiled slightly, looked around the people in the room, and found that many of them were known to him, and he couldn't help feeling a little emotional. Moreover, among the crowd, he also saw the figure of Danzo. His eyes were still so dark and gloomy. Shaking his head, Naruto no longer bothered about these things, and said straight to the point, "I think everyone in Konoha has already received the news. I have organized the shadows of the major shinobi villages to come to hold the Five Shadows Conference." "Yes, is your purpose in doing this really to end the war?" Sandai stepped forward and asked. Naruto nodded. "No one wants a war to happen." The three generations also agreed with the words, and after a moment of silence, he opened his mouth and said, "I want to ask your excellency a question." "Tell me." Naruto smiled lightly. "How did you learn the art of Mokuden, wood style, and Hiraishin? And do you have some connection with Konoha?" The three generations finally asked this question that everyone has been puzzled and curious about. Naruto shook his head slightly, pondered for a while, and said, "To tell you the truth, I'm not actually from this world. I came here just by chance. Maybe ending the war was just my whim, anyway. I can't find the answers to these questions either. In that world, I'm the 6th generation Hokage of Konoha village." What? Naruto's words shocked everyone present. Not from this world, from another world. 6th Hokage. Is there a Konoha village in that other world? Isn't that impossible? It's too hard to imagine. Even if you don't want to say it, you can't make up such a reason. Listening to everyone's discussion, Naruto sighed slightly in his heart. He also has a feeling of confusion now. Before, he had been worried about breaking the balance of this world and disrupting the history of this world, but in these days, he found that no matter how deliberate he was, it does not change history, but many things will still change with its own intervention. Once the butterfly flaps its wings, the storm will not stop. Therefore, now he would rather put all his hopes on the idea that this is a parallel world, so that he can live here with peace of mind, otherwise he will always worry about being entangled in the historical plot, and I am afraid that sooner or later he will die of melancholy. Chapter 263 Natural Force. After he figured it all out, he no longer bothered about Makoto's dedication to himself. Anyway, this is a parallel space, and everything here will not affect that world. Besides, can he return to that world? Also said too. So, in this world, you should do what you want, as long as everything goes well and you live a fulfilling life. After the shock, everyone questioned again. Since you were really the sixth generation of Hokage, it must be from our descendants, right? Yes, Naruto nodded. As far as I know, no matter how powerful time-space ninjutsu is in this world, it can only travel through the existing space. How can you directly travel through time and return to our era from the afterlife? Reasons to prevaricate us, someone stood up and asked. Yeah, there's never been an example of time travel in this world, not even the Six Paths Sage can do it. Everyone's doubts came one after another, and Naruto couldn't help but spread his hands. If you don't believe me, there's nothing you can do. Okay, everyone should be quiet first. Let's not mention the identity of your Lord Naruto, even if he is really the sixth generation of Hokage in the future Konoha village. These things have nothing to do with us now. How will there be countless in the future? Maybe, let's do the things in front of you now. The three generations waved their hands to stop everyone's doubts. Naruto nodded and smiled. The three-generation-old man said it well. I am here to inform you about the Five Shadows Conference. I will also come on the day when it is held. Pause. Naruto waved his hand and said, okay, that's all for the time being. I won't bother you all, I'll leave now. After speaking, his figure disappeared in place with a swoosh. It really is Hiraishin's art. Sandai muttered to himself as he watched Naruto disappear in front of him. Lord Sandai, do you believe what he said? At this time, an elite ninja stood up and asked. Perhaps, if it's really what he said, at least Konoha village can develop to 6 generations. 3 generations took a deep breath and said, the information obtained from Naruto today is too exciting, even if it is the well-informed 3 generations also have the feeling of being in an illusion. And Naruto's words are destined to make Konoha's group entangled for a long time. However, Naruto, who had already returned to Kikyo Castle, didn't care about that. He came to the room and saw that the 2 women were still asleep, so he didn't disturb them, and closed the door again and walked out. After walking around the city for a while, I felt a little bored, so I went to a forest outside the city and sat down to practice and appreciate the power of nature. What is strange is that after he sat down and sank in his mind, he quickly sensed the surrounding natural energy rushing towards him, but as soon as he got to his side, the obstacles that should have existed suddenly disappeared. The pure and huge power of nature penetrated into the body in an instant, as if a group of cheerful children were thrown into the arms of their mothers, so active and fast. At this moment, Naruto only felt that his heart was beating wildly, and the immortal power of the curse on his neck suddenly burst out. In an instant, a faint golden light emanated from Naruto's body. However, that huge natural force instantly suppressed the power of the curse seal in his body, and the golden light on his body gradually dimmed. How is this going? Naruto was full of doubts in his heart. He wanted to activate the power of the curse mark, but he could no longer do it. Because the nature of the power of the curse mark was slightly different from these external forces of nature, it seemed that the two could not coexist. Moreover, with the passage of time, Naruto felt that the natural force in his body became stronger and stronger. When they combined with their own chakra, the new force generated, this force filled the cells and tissues of the whole body. It made him feel an unparalleled sense of fulfillment. At the same time, the immortal power of the curse seal in the original body was being absorbed, assimilated and merged by this huge force. In just a short time, Naruto could no longer feel it. To the original power of the curse. The curse mark on his neck also disappeared suddenly, and at the same time, a strong golden light suddenly appeared on his body. Suddenly, Naruto was shocked, and his consciousness suddenly appeared in the space where Kyuubi, Ninetales was sealed. It's so comfortable. This power is... Kyuubi, Ninetales, squinted to feel the chakra filling Naruto's body, and shouted. At this time, Naruto also appeared in front of Kyuubi, Ninetales, at the right time. Stinky boy, what's going on with this power? Why does it make me feel like I've returned to nature, so kind? Kyuubi, Ninetales, looked down at Naruto and asked inexplicably. Naruto looked at his hands and the strong golden light emitting from his body at this time, raised his head and smiled. Kyuubi, Ninetales, this is the power of nature. This power makes me feel a strong desire to put you the feeling of power assimilation. The power of nature. It's impossible. How can you be a mere human being to master the power of nature? Even the cultivation method of the power of nature circulating in the ninja world is only a few skins of the power of nature. How can you possibly learn it? Suddenly, Kyuubi, Ninetales, widened his eyes and looked at him in disbelief. Could it be that you have obtained the power of nature? Natural origin. Naruto looked at Kyuubi, Ninetales, puzzled. Looks like you know something. Kyuubi, Ninetales, looked at him for a long time before sighing. Looks like my fate is over. Huh, Kyuubi, Ninetales, when did you get so downcast? Is this the same Kyuubi, Ninetales, who always wanted to kill me? Naruto shook his head and laughed. Humph. Kyuubi, Ninetales, snorted coldly. The power of nature is the source of all natural power, and it is the root of the power that nurtures all things in this world, and even our nine-tailed beasts come from this power. In the power. Naruto couldn't help but wonder for a moment, and wondered if 10 tails, the product of natural forces, were born because of this force. So, is the power of Kyuubi, Ninetales, equivalent to a part of this power? It is no wonder then that the natural chakra of Raichi Cave was absorbed so easily. Thinking of something, Naruto suddenly looked at Kyuubi, Ninetales, and smiled. It seems that I have mastered this power now. Can I directly absorb your power? Kyuubi, Ninetales' expression changed slightly. Haha, it seems that I guessed right. It's really troublesome for you to live in my body all the time. Let's see how I absorb you this time. Humph, don't be imaginative. Although you have mastered the power of nature's source, I'm by no means so easy to obey. It's not so easy to completely control the power of nature's source. Chapter 264 Power Upgrade. When Naruto woke up from his mind, he found that his body had undergone earth-shaking changes, and his whole body was shining with golden light, which was extremely dazzling. He opened his arms and found that there were some strange runes up and down his body. There were some black rune marks on his arms, legs, and chest. Looking at these marks, Naruto always felt a very strange feeling. Mysterious feeling. Moreover, if there is a mirror at this time, Naruto will definitely find that the 6 paths beard that disappeared on his face has now become the black talisman of 6 paths. Feeling the power that fills his body at the moment, Naruto feels that he is several times stronger than in an ordinary state. Even in the state of the curse mark, it is completely incomparable to the current feeling. He waved his hand lightly. Boom! Suddenly a gust of wind was brought up, rolling up the surrounding leaves. Naruto was startled, but he didn't expect that. He just waved his hand lightly, and he had such power. With all his strength, wouldn't he be unstoppable? Taking a deep breath, Naruto's body suddenly jumped high, and a golden arc of light flashed across the air. There was a sudden explosion on the flat lawn in front of him. The soil was scattered, the smoke filled the sky, and the ground seemed to have an earthquake. The same rumbling sound came out. Moreover, the ground cracked directly from the blasted place, and the cracks with a diameter of tens of meters extended to the surroundings, showing the shape of a dilapidated spider web. Naruto stood in the disfigured pit that he had destroyed, looked at his hands and couldn't help but mutter to himself, "This kind of power is stronger than Tsunade's strange power. Who can withstand this punch?" Feeling the surging and powerful power in himself, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of loneliness as a master, thinking that he had gone from a genin who could not know anything after transmigration, and worked hard to train and fight step by step until now, and finally got such a powerful one. Strength, he was full of emotion. However, this power is too powerful, and as QB, Ninetales, said, I can't fully master it yet. It seems that more training is needed. In the city, this huge tremor came, and the people who were walking on the street thought that another war was coming, and they all looked at the direction where the tremor came from with frightened eyes. There were many Konoha ninjas jumping over there, thinking they would find the enemy's trail, but instead they saw the shattered earth where they were. Isn't it hard that there has been a fierce battle here? They looked at the dilapidated scene around them and couldn't help but look at each other. At this time, Naruto had already left the place and returned to the hotel. The two girls, Makoto and Sarah, were also awakened by the shock just now. At this time, they both opened their big confused eyes and looked out the window. You guys are awake. Naruto appeared by the bed with a Hiraishin technique. Naruto, are you coming back so soon? Sa stretched his waist, and the quilt covering him slipped quietly, revealing the infinite spring inside. She couldn't help reaching out and pulling the quilt, covering her delicate body again, and asked with a slightly Yuhi expression on her face. Naruto smiled and nodded, I'll be back when I'm done. You've already been seen by me, so you're still afraid of this. Sarah's face became even more Yuhi's face when she heard this, and she couldn't help but recall the scene when the two met for the first time. At that time, this guy actually hid in his own bath and showed himself up and down. Lust, wolf. Thinking of this, Sarah couldn't help but glared at him coquettishly. I saw your lustful appearance a long time ago, how bad? I really didn't mean it that time. Naruto touched his nose. Who believes you? Sarah retracted back into the quilt, leaving only one head exposed, and pouted at him. Now that you have eaten both of us, are you satisfied? Ha, satisfied, of course satisfied. For the sake of your spirit, I'll reward you. Naruto laughed and immediately threw himself on the bed. Ouch! At this moment, a soft cry from Makoto came. Naruto, you pressed the wrong person. It hurts. Where are your hands? Naruto looked down, only to find that Makoto's plump, full, soft chest was already in his hands. She cried out in a coquettish voice, it's broad daylight and you want to mess around. Get down here. Yeah, I'm still swollen there. Naruto, you have no pity on Shangshiyu. Sarah continued to criticize Naruto. Of course, Naruto didn't really want to do it with them. He was just joking. He smiled and pinched Sarah's nose. Okay, I can't fight the two of you. I'll spare you today, next time you can come together. Beautiful thoughts. This is the only time. I won't do such absurd and shameful things again next time. Makoto angrily exclaimed. Me too. Sarah nodded in agreement. Seeing the shy and embarrassed expressions on the faces of the two women, Naruto moved his index finger, but since they were both just broken, he just thought about it, and didn't really do it with them. After letting go of the two girls, Naruto stood by and smiled and watched them get up and get dressed. After the two women finished wearing them shyly and embarrassedly, they took their hands and walked out of the room. Naruto, you are in a good mood today, did you encounter something happy? Sarah was very happy when she saw Naruto suddenly become so happy, thinking to herself that it was herself and Makoto yesterday. He was more comfortable being served at night, which made him happy both physically and mentally. Makoto said on the side, this guy ate both of us last night, it's no wonder he's not happy. Thinking of what he had done last night, his face was on fire. But this guy Naruto didn't get tired of dealing with both himself and Sarah last night, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction in his heart, looking at him with eyes full of affection. After taking the two girls out of the hotel, the three went to the street to eat something, and after wandering around for a while, Naruto said, the Five Shadows convention will be held soon, we will enter Konoha in 2 days. Let's join in the fun, and by the way, go to the Uchiha clan and tell the clan about Makoto. What do you think, Makoto? Makoto nodded lightly. Well, Naruto, I'll listen to you, but when the time comes, my father will be on his side. It's not a problem, now you're my woman, even if your father doesn't agree, it won't change the fact. Chapter 265 Clan Rules. After 3 days in Kikyo Castle, Naruto had already heard the people in the city talking about the Five Shadows Conference. The shadows of the other 4 villages have agreed to gather in Konoha village tomorrow to hold the Five Shadows Conference, and the daimyo from various countries are already on their way. So these few days, the ninjas who have been entrusted with protection tasks are particularly nervous, because this is a very sensitive period. If there is any problem with these big figures in various countries, it is very likely that the war will become out of control. Fortunately, because of Naruto's deterrent effect, people in each village did not dare to mess around, and the force sent to protect them was unprecedentedly powerful. In Konoha village, everyone is preparing for the Five Shadows meeting, because this meeting is the key to deciding whether the next ninja world will continue the war or enter peace, so everyone attaches great importance to it, especially the ordinary villagers. They are I hope that these high-ranking bigwigs can negotiate everything peacefully. In Hokage's office, the 3 generations are receiving news one after another, all of which are related to the progress of the names and shadows of various countries. Looking at the information in his hand, the eyes of the 3 generations flickered. Whether it's war or peace, here it is. Meanwhile, Naruto and Makoto Sarah have entered the village. Naruto, let's go visit the next 3 generations of Hokage-sama first. Sarah said, looking at the tall Hokage building not far away. The 3rd generation of Hokage should be very busy now, let's not disturb him. Naruto smiled. Well, but if you come to Konoha and don't visit the village chief, it always feels a little wrong. As the queen, Sarah seems to care about etiquette issues. Naruto put his arm around her shoulder. It's okay, we'll be able to see them at the Five Shadows convention anyway. Instead of this, I think it's better to go to Makoto's house first. Saying so, Naruto looked at Makoto. Makoto lowered his head slightly, a look of worry and shyness on his face. Naruto, I'm a little scared. Ah, what are you afraid of? Ugly daughter-in-law always wants to see her in-laws. Naruto patted her plump buttocks lightly. Makoto let out a soft cry, and looked around in a hurry. Seeing that no one around noticed this, he slapped him on the shoulder in embarrassment. Disgusting. This is Konoha village. If someone from the village sees it, I am going to die of shame. Naruto laughed. The residents of the Uchiha clan. The 3 Naruto stood at the entrance of the street. Looking at the familiar scene on this familiar street, Naruto flashed a flash of nostalgia in his eyes. Makoto said, my house just needs to go straight here and I'll be there. I haven't been to Sister Makoto's house yet. I don't know what it's like, hey, but Sister Makoto's father is very fierce. Sarah said. Okay, why don't you just go home? With me here, what are you afraid of? Naruto pushed Makoto and hugged her to the place where Makoto's house was. It didn't take long for several people to stop at the gate of a large mansion yard. Is this here, Sister Makoto? Sarah looked inside curiously. Well, it looks like my father should be there at this time. Makoto said nervously. Naruto took her hand and strode in with a smile on his face, followed by Sarah. The huge yard was empty, but Naruto had already sensed some unusual aura, and the corners of his mouth could not help but cocked slightly. Usually there should be someone training in the yard at this time. Makoto looked around strangely for a while. Swish swish. At this moment, a group of figures suddenly appeared in front of the 3 of Naruto. You're finally back. A stern voice sounded, and Naruto looked closely. It was the 2nd elder, Makoto's father. I saw more than a dozen ninjas beside him at this time. All of them looked serious, and the face of the 2nd elder was also ashen. Father. Makoto stepped forward and called out. The 2nd elder glanced at her expressionlessly, and said lightly, now that you know you're back. Makoto lowered his head and nodded slightly. What's the use of coming back now? However, the 2nd elder snorted coldly, and Naruto frowned at the cold tone. Makoto's tender body trembled, and his heart suddenly felt like crying. Grievance. But she resisted the urge to cry, and said respectfully, "My father, I'm sorry, I contradicted you that day and made you unhappy." The second elder heard her apology, and then his face became better. After glancing at Naruto, he said to her, "Have you figured it out this time? Would you like to marry Fugaku?" Makoto was stunned, and looked at Naruto. Naruto knew that it was time for him to appear, and he slowly stepped forward with a smile on his face. "I'm sorry, uncle, Makoto is now my woman, so let's not mention the marriage between her and Fugaku." "What?" The second elder's expression changed involuntarily. "Makoto, since I was a child, I know that the character is not such a casual person. Fugaku has been with you for so long since I was a child, and I haven't seen the two of you holding hands. This time, you agreed with this kid so rashly." The second elder stared at Makoto. Makoto's face turned pale when asked, and after a long while, he lowered his head and finally said, "Because I like Naruto." "You." The second elder looked ugly and pointed at Makoto, but he was too angry to speak. "This time Fugaku has made a lot of contributions in the war, and becoming the patriarch should be a sure thing, and if Makoto marries Fugaku, then his second elder will be directly promoted to the first elder, becoming the existence of the clan second only to the patriarch, and as the father-in-law of the patriarch, the power to speak and do things is even greater." Unexpectedly, this unsatisfactory daughter actually found a wild man from outside to come back. At this moment, the voice of a young man in the crowd behind the second elder came. "Makoto, is what you said true?" Was Uchiha Fugaku, and I saw that his face was full of disappointment at the moment, and his eyes were full of jealousy when he looked at Naruto. Makoto nodded lightly. "Why? We are close friends. Why do you like him instead of me?" "Like is like, there is no reason." Makoto sighed and came to Naruto's side, the jade hand tucked into Naruto's palm. Naruto and her looked at each other and smiled. The second elder couldn't bear to see it, and couldn't help but scolded loudly, "It's shameless. Makoto, do you still know the rules of the clan? To accept the sanctions of the Uchiha clan." Chapter 266 Threat. Naruto didn't expect the Uchiha clan to have such a rule, so he couldn't help being slightly startled, looked at Makoto, but saw that Makoto lowered his head and didn't speak, as if it was a tacit consent. Naruto couldn't help but be moved. Makoto would rather violate the rules of the clan for himself. This affection is very deep. He couldn't see Makoto's embarrassment. He pulled her back, looked directly at the second elder and said, "Uncle, Makoto has my woman will marry into my family from now on. I don't care what clan rules or marriage you have. In short, from now on, Makoto will be protected by me, and I will not allow anyone to hurt her half a hair." Speaking of which, he exuded an aura that transcended Kage level, and everyone couldn't help but stay there. Makoto was greatly moved, but in order to prevent Naruto from falling out with his father, he could only pull his sleeve to signal him not to be too aggressive. Naruto held her hand, signaled her not to worry, and continued, "I think the Uchiha family are all smart people, otherwise they wouldn't have been through so long and prospered. Think carefully, do you want to agree with me? And Makoto?" Speaking of which, Naruto also cooperated to show his strength, which is equivalent to threatening the people of the Uchiha family. Others were deterred by Naruto's strength and did not dare to speak, but who was the second elder? Even if Naruto's strength reaches Kage level, even if he is the mysterious figure who has made a lot of trouble in the ninja world, the dignity and rules of his family will not be easily changed because of this. Seeing that they were all silent, Naruto's mouth twitched slightly, and he turned around and took the two women to leave. Wait! At this moment, a light shout suddenly came from outside the courtyard gate. A figure slowly walked into the courtyard. Patriarch! Everyone in Uchiha couldn't help but look overjoyed, as if they had found the backbone, and the second elder also showed respect. Naruto turned around, looked at the man who came, and smiled faintly, but saw that man was wearing combat armor, as if he had just stepped down from the battlefield. Old-fashioned. Fugaku got out of the crowd and came to him and called out respectfully, "Father." The patriarch nodded slightly towards his son, and with a wave of his arm, a group of ninjas suddenly jumped out from the top of the wall of the compound, all of them exuding a chilling aura. Even Yellow Flash and Sanin didn't dare to say such a big thing in front of Uchiha. I want to see why you are so arrogant. The patriarch stepped forward and stared at Naruto, and said coldly, the majesty of the Uchiha family does not allow it to trample on anyone. Not even if you are Senju Hashirama. Naruto couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect the Uchiha clan to be so awesome at this time. Their ancestor Madara was no longer there. He thought he was very powerful. He couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. It is true that a Yellow Flash or a Sanin alone cannot compete with a group. After all, they have a lot of things in Konoha, and they can't do whatever they want, but they are different. Man, nothing in this world will fetter him, and the only ones who care about Makoto and Sarah are always by his side, so he doesn't need to worry so much at all. At this time, Makoto felt that the situation was getting worse, and couldn't help but look at his father. But the second elder just shook his head and turned his head away, ignoring her look for help. Is the rules of the Uchiha clan really that important? Naruto couldn't help asking. Clan rules are dignity. If outsiders violate the clan rules, they are trampling on the dignity of our Uchiha clan. So no matter how strong you are, we must maintain the dignity of the clan. Even if you risk the lives of the entire clan because of this. Naruto smiled slightly. The faces of the people changed greatly. Makoto couldn't help but change his face, holding Naruto's arm and begging, no. Naruto, you can't hurt my clan. Naruto looked at her nervous look, lowered his head and whispered in her ear, don't worry, I won't really hurt them. But this group of people seems to be a little disabled, and they shouldn't be able to fix it if they don't beat them well. Makoto breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. Seeing the two whispering intimately there again, Fugaku's eyes were full of jealousy, and the patriarch's face was ugly. The woman his son liked, and he was also a prospective daughter-in-law recognized by him, was so close to this man in front of everyone. This is simply slap in the face. However, Naruto's words just now also shocked them. Could it be that he still wants to exterminate the clan? Patriarch laughed in anger. What an arrogant boy. Do you really think of our Uchiha clan as soft persimmons? Other villages are afraid of you. Konoha village is not afraid of you. My Uchiha clan is not afraid of you. In his heart, although Naruto is powerful, but it should not have reached the level of Uchiha Madara. If he wants his family to succumb to such an outsider, he feels ashamed as the patriarch. Moreover, the Uchiha family's status in Konoha is also unique. If this is true, if the trouble is big, the village will never give up. Yellow Flash, Sanin, the 3 generations of Hokage, these characters are not so simple, so you don't have to be soft now. Moreover, he also believed that a peerless powerhouse like Naruto should not completely oppose the entire village for the sake of a mere woman. However, despite all the calculations, he still underestimated Naruto. Naruto's character, how can he tolerate his own woman into someone else's arms? Yes, our Uchiha clan is not afraid of anyone. Uchiha is the strongest. Uchiha is the strongest. Hearing the words of the patriarch, the people around them all complied with each other, and they suddenly shouted loudly. Idiot! Naruto couldn't help but curse. At this time, the Uchiha patriarch suddenly opened his mouth and shouted, first catch this guy for me. Yes. Suddenly 3 elite ninjas jumped out from the crowd and flew towards Naruto. Naruto is helpless. Don't these guys have no brains? Or do you think there are too many people to be invincible? Their own strength is already there, but they are not afraid of dying, which can only be described as a brain. Perhaps, they thought they could beat themselves. It seems that he still underestimated the so-called dignity of the ethnic group. Facing the warriors who rushed over, Naruto shook his head slightly, glanced at Makoto, his hands were slightly sealed, and suddenly 3 shadow clones appeared in front of him. These 3 shadow clones has 1/3 of Naruto's strength. The 3 ninjas who rushed up saw that Naruto didn't do anything, but divided 3 shadow clone out to fight the enemy. They felt that they were underestimated and they couldn't help but get angry. They pulled out their weapons and came towards Naruto's shadow clone. However, 3 shadow clones stood still, and when the 3 flew over, their bodies suddenly flashed a few times with an incredible kakuzu and speed. Bang bang bang. With 3 soft clicks, the 3 so-called elite ninjas fell to the ground in an instant. Everyone's head was stomped on by Naruto with his exquisite physical skills and a speed that is difficult for ordinary people to capture. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help being shocked. Some of them just turned on Sharingan, and after seeing Naruto's shadow clone's movements, the shock in his heart couldn't be further added, because the speed of Naruto's shot, Kakuzu, was beyond everyone's acceptance. Even if it was a specialized physique, even the strong Hyuga clan is difficult to deal with. Not to mention these few people who are not good at physique. Is there such a strong person? Even Sannin, Yellow Flash, and even the 3 generations of Hokage will not be strong enough to kill the elites of the Uchiha clan with just a few shadow clone. At this moment, the Uchiha Patriarch and the second elder began to beat drums in their hearts. After seeing Naruto's shot with their own eyes, they already had a bad feeling. And Naruto looked at the second elder and said indifferently, "How is it? Does anyone want to verify it?" "Uncle, I know you want to verify my strength with your own eyes, so next, you and the Patriarch will come over in person." How was World War I? Chapter 267 Disappointed. The second elder couldn't help but be taken a step back. In the face of absolute power, what kind of dignity? What clan rules? It doesn't matter at all. Compared with the second elder, the Patriarch can at least remain calm. As the leader of the clan, his every move will affect the nerves of the clan. If he shows a hint of cowardice at this time, the entire Uchiha clan will be defeated by Naruto. It will definitely make the Uchiha family lose face if the matter spreads out. Therefore, in the face of Naruto's provocation at this moment, the Patriarch had long expected that he was not an opponent, but he still stepped forward firmly, and the 3 Tomo Sharingan opened instantly. "You are very strong, I am not your opponent, but for the dignity and glory of the Uchiha clan, I am willing to fight with you." His back was so tall in the eyes of the clan at this moment, so that at this time all the clansmen looked at Naruto with incomparable hatred, as if Naruto were the demon king who destroyed the world. Naruto glanced at the eyes of these people, and couldn't help laughing at this. "What's the point? You promised me a long time ago to take Makoto away. After all, isn't it caused by your pedantic clan rules?" Shaking his head, Naruto sighed, "I'm really disappointed. This so-called clan has bound your group of people with such superior conditions into this, it's too stupid. Today, I will break your so-called clan rules. And think outside the box." Speaking, he left Makoto and Sarah, walked forward, evacuated the 3 shadow clone, and looked at the people around him. "Are you all going together? Or just send one representative?" Naruto glanced around, and finally fixed his gaze on the face of the nearly 50-year-old Patriarch in front of him. The Patriarch took a deep breath, slowly pulled out the ninja sword behind him, clenched his hands tightly, and stared at Naruto. "Just let this old man be your opponent." Naruto chuckled lightly. At this time, all the surrounding Uchiha tribesmen were angered by Naruto, because Naruto's words and his contemptuous laughter made the blood of these tribesmen burn. "Patriarch, let's go together. Don't worry about how many people there are. This bastard who dares to despise our Uchiha clan, we must show him the power of our Uchiha." "Yeah, Patriarch, we will defend the dignity of the Uchiha clan even with our lives." The crowd shouted loudly, and all of them stared at Naruto in indignation. If those eyes could kill people, Naruto would have died countless times. Seeing the excitement of the crowd, the Patriarch nodded lightly. "Let's go together." I don't know who shouted first, and immediately the countless Uchiha people around jumped high, pulled out their kunai and weapons and rushed towards the place where Naruto was. Naruto just took out a handful of Hiraishin kunai, leaned forward slightly, and when the group of people rushed in front of him like wolves and tigers, his body moved violently. Move. As if a golden light flashed through the night, with a series of clanging metal knocks, the weapons of the few people in front of them had been knocked out. Immediately afterwards, he raised his feet and hit the chests of the unarmed people. Suddenly, he flew backwards and knocked down a group of people behind him. Naruto's speed has increased to the fastest. Sharingan of the Uchiha clan could not capture his figure clearly, and could only see a faint arc. When they reacted, their own people had already flown out. The patriarch stood in the crowd, watching the clansmen fly out one by one, and Naruto's figure was like a golden whirlwind. Wherever he passed, there was no enemy of unity. Retreat. Use ninjutsu. The patriarch shouted loudly, and instructed everyone to back away. In an instant, dozens of people used Kaden, fire-style, great fireball jutsu at the place where Naruto was. Dozens of huge flame balls seemed to cover where Naruto was like a stormy sea. Makoto and Sarah looked at Naruto surrounded by flames and didn't worry about anything. They had seen Naruto's strength for a long time, and they didn't care about such an attack at all. Instead, Makoto is now a little worried that Naruto might hit too hard and hurt his clan. Everyone looked nervously at the Naruto who was about to be wrapped in flames, and the atmosphere was heavy. Suddenly, Naruto lowered his head and slowly stretched out his hand, with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. At the same time, a dark blue Rasengan suddenly formed in his palm. Sweetened, water-style, vortex blade. I saw Naruto's palm flip gently, and the dark blue chakra water ball with an extremely powerful momentum slowly fell to the ground. At the same time, his figure turned into a golden light and disappeared into the flames. The place where Naruto was located became a sea of fire, but the next second after the flames erupted, a more powerful chakra suddenly swelled with the overwhelming water flow. Almost instantly, from the original hot sea of fire, it has become a large ocean. Moreover, the blade of the water flow with the power of the infinite spiral spreads around like a tsunami. And the entire large yard of Makoto's house was completely destroyed by the power of the water at this moment. At this time, Naruto had already taken Makoto and Sarah high into the air, looking at the compound below which was almost covered by the entire Uzumaki water waves. Naruto murmured, "Makoto, this time. You don't blame me for ruining your house, do you?" Makoto looked at the scene below nervously. She saw that Naruto's ninjutsu obviously controlled the power, otherwise it really broke out and would definitely tear down her entire home. She shook her head gently. "How can I blame you? If you used stronger power to destroy everything in normal times, I'm very happy to be able to do this for me now." Seeing her being so considerate, Naruto's original unhappiness dissipated, and he landed on a roof with the two of them, looked at the embarrassed people around him, and shook his head slightly. "Hey, it's really boring. Makoto, I suddenly don't want to entangle with them anymore. Since your clansmen don't agree with us, let's just leave here." Makoto was stunned for a moment, and when he heard the bleakness in Naruto's words, he couldn't help but feel extremely guilty. "Naruto, you were originally a great hero who stopped the chaos of war, but for me, being treated so suspiciously by my clansmen, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." At this time, even Makoto, who has always been proud of the Uchiha clan, and couldn't help but feel disappointed with this clan who was obsessed with rules because of this. Chapter 268 5 Shadows Compete for Profit. Naruto just smiled slightly, shook his head, and glanced at the Uchiha crowd around him. "Let's go." With the two girls, he disappeared in place the next moment. "Bastard. Where is he in our Uchiha clan? Come and leave if you want." When the Uchiha people calmed down from the chaotic scene, the patriarch looked at the messy compound and couldn't help but get angry. "Patriarch, he is too strong. We can't beat him at all. And he comes and goes without a trace, even if we are fast, we can't catch him." A clan member lamented. "Hey." The patriarch sighed heavily. The second elder's face was ashen. At this moment, a soft cough sounded behind everyone. 3 generations of Hokage slowly walked from the street not far away, with 2 advisors standing beside him, as well as some high-level Konoha. 3 generations of adults. Why are you here? The patriarch couldn't help but be surprised when he saw this, and hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. The next day, the three of Naruto returned to Kikyo Castle for one night and then came to Konoha village. In today's Konoha village, there are more pedestrians than usual. Not only that, but the defense force of the entire village has become stronger and stronger. The 5 shadows have arrived at Konoha village one after another, and it is estimated that it is about to start now. Let's go and have a look, Naruto said to the 2 women beside him as he walked on the street. Well, I also really want to see the shadows of the 5 great ninja villages, Sarah said with a hint of anticipation on her face. My current chakra is enough to use the 3-body technique. Naruto, you said how much am I compared to these big men? Sarah followed him to learn ninjutsu for a few days, but he didn't expect to compare it to Kage level now. He couldn't help feeling amused, and scratched her nose lightly. It's a long way. When will you be here? I'll hold on for 10 seconds, let's talk about it. Humph, you know you're amazing. You know how to underestimate me. If I had practiced ninjutsu from a young age like Sister Makoto, I would definitely be better than you, Sarah said with her mouth up. Naruto and Makoto both laughed. That's not necessarily the case. Naruto's strength is the most powerful among the people I've ever met. No one can reach such a height as Naruto. Those so-called geniuses were at Naruto's age. How can he be so powerful? Sarah, no matter how talented you are definitely not as good as Naruto, Makoto snorted. Sarah froze as soon as she heard it. While talking and laughing, the 3 of them had already arrived at the location of the 5 Shadows Conference, in the secret room of the Hokage building. Because Naruto was very familiar with Konoha, he quickly appeared in front of the Hokage building with the 2 girls. However, because of the meeting inside, their appearance was quickly stopped by a few guarding ninjas. In the conference room, the shadows of the 5 great ninja villages, as well as the great names of the 5 great nations, all sat together, forming a table, exactly 10 people. At this point, the 3rd generation Hokage, the 3rd generation Tsuchikage, the 3rd generation Raikage, as well as the 4th generation Mizukage and the just selected 4th generation Kazekage, were looking at each other. The 3rd generation, based on their seniority and age, showed the appearance of seniors in front of the 2 4th generations, while the 2 4th generations were arrogant. Because the war just ended, they naturally had little respect for these seniors. This led to the fact that although the 5 Shadows Conference was initiated by Naruto, during the specific negotiation, these people disagreed with each other, so it was inevitable that they would have a mentality of opposing each other. 3 generations of Hokage first stood up and introduced the purpose of the conference and some related matters to be negotiated. When he finished introducing, everyone bowed their heads and pondered. After a while, the major actors all raised their heads to talk. The 4th generation Kazekage in Sandin village pointed at Konoha, saying that the disappearance of the 3rd generation Kazekage in their village must be related to Konoha village, and repeatedly asked Konoha to hand over the 3rd generation Kazekage. Konoha village, who had never done this at all, it was natural that he could not come up with anything, so the 3 generations had no choice but to shake their heads. Then, it was Onoki, the dwarf from the village of Iwagakure, who made a claim to Konoha, saying how many elites they lost in the war, and if Konoha did not make compensation, the war would continue. Immediately afterwards, Jinchuriki Column Lee Kanya, a 3-tailed man from Kurigakure village, made representations to Sandin village again. After talking with each other for a while, everyone found that the interests of each other were really difficult to balance. 3rd generation couldn't help but sighed. The war has already caused the people in our villages to suffer. If possible, wouldn't it be better for everyone to step aside and make this ninja world peaceful? HMPH. It's easy to say, Onoki sneered disdainfully. Then how do we comfort the heroic spirits who died in the war? How do we comfort the grief-stricken people in the country? Tsuchikage is right. 3 generations of Raikage nodded. The Land of Earth and the Land of Thunder, which advocate military expansion, actually wanted to expand their territory and plunder resources through war. The war was stopped by Naruto's intervention. They were actually very unhappy. The three generations are trying their best not to cooperate, in order to get more benefits in the negotiation. Seeing that the two of them didn't give up at all, the third generation Hokage could only shake his head and sigh. And several daimyo are basically suggestions from the same shadow that they belong to. Therefore, this negotiation is supposed to be a battlefield for the major Kage levels to compete for interests. At the moment when the shadows were fighting fiercely, the three of Naruto were blocked by the Konoha guards. Looking at the guard with a cold look, Sarah couldn't help worrying. What should I do? These guys won't let us in. Sister Makoto can't even help you. The Five Shadows Conference is the most high-end conference in the ninja world. I'm just an ordinary jonin. I don't have a chance to enter without permission. What's more, I've already gotten into trouble with the village clansmen. Makoto sighed slightly. At this moment, the ninja guarding the gate suddenly came up, looked at Makoto and asked respectfully, Are you Uchiha Makoto-sama? I am. Ah, I'm so sorry. The three generations of adults told me that if you come, I will bring you and your friends in with you. The three of Naruto were stunned when they heard it. Chapter 269 Domineering Leak. It turned out that the three generations had told the gatekeeper ninja last night that if they encountered Uchiha Makoto, they would allow the other party to pass. It's just that the gatekeeper ninja didn't recognize Makoto for a while, so he didn't realize it until he heard Sarah speak just now. That's why I immediately ran over and apologized. At this time, the arguing in the conference room was getting louder and louder. When the three of Naruto opened the door and went in, they happened to see a loud noise inside. He couldn't help frowning. However, Naruto's entry also surprised everyone. The name of the Kingdom of Wind shivered slightly when he saw him, but he remembered the horror of Naruto. Even in the Sand Ninja Village, it was useless for him to be protected by many people. Entering his room was like entering a garden. Others have different reactions when they see Naruto. The village of Kurigakure in the country of water is also deeply affected by it. They have experienced Naruto's powerful power firsthand, and they are helpless and deeply afraid of him. Since Onoki of Iwagakure village was not in the village at the time, and Naruto entered the village to destroy it, he left a lot of traces of Mokuden, wood style, which took a long time for their village to recover, so he was furious at the moment, but at the same time my heart is also full of fear. Third generation of Raikage fought Naruto once, and he deeply admired his power. Seeing him appear at this moment, he nodded slightly to show his respect. Seeing everyone's different reactions, Naruto couldn't help showing a smile on his face, and walked towards them slowly. At this time, the third generation Tsuchikage was the first to lose his temper and roared at Naruto, "It's you bastard. While the old man is not here, he attacked our village. It's despicable and shameless. Now you dare to appear at our Five Shadows convention." Naruto smiled and ignored his shouting, just glanced at the crowd lightly, plucked his ears with his hands, and said straight to the point, "I heard you guys clamoring at the door just now. To put it simply, I call on everyone to participate in the Five Shadows Conference, not for you to compete with each other for interests, but for you to establish a peaceful agreement, and to coexist peacefully without aggression in the future. If you still sit here with that kind of self-interested thinking, this meeting is fruitless. What if there is no result? This old man doesn't need you to point the finger." The third generation Tsuchikage snorted coldly. "In terms of strength, we may not be as good as you, but in terms of qualifications, you don't even have half of us. You have no right to speak up here." Third generation Tsuchikage actually expressed the feelings of the majority of people present, especially those big names, who have powerful powers like Naruto but only use them according to their own temperament. They are not qualified to talk about state affairs at all. Hearing his words, Naruto couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. After all, he is also the sixth generation of Hokage. Although he is still unfamiliar with political twists and turns, he still understands some big and bad things. This group of self-proclaimed politicians, and they keep saying for themselves the people of the country are fighting for fame and fortune here, but they don't care about those who pay the most for it. The next moment, the look on his face suddenly became playful. He glanced at the three generations, and then smiled. I am not as good as you in terms of qualifications, and I want to say some big things, but I can't say anything to you, if I just beat you to the ground. You certainly won't be convinced. Why don't you? Since you both like to fight for profit by war, how about I play with you? But the premise is that I join Konoha and help Konoha to fight. Quote. Everyone was stunned. Hold. If he could scold people, at this time, except for the Fire Country daimyo and three generations, the other shadows and daimyo wanted to scold him wildly. What is this? This is the threat of eating fruit. And it's so threatening. And leave the choice to yourself. Cunning, treacherous, shameless. At this time, people only used these words to describe him. With Naruto's ability to work alone in a ninja village, if coupled with the many elites and human and financial resources of Konoha village, almost no village can resist. Unless the other four villages formed an alliance and suppressed them by their numbers, Naruto's Mokuden wood style was a powerful killing move that almost ignored the numbers. Besides, the various villages that have quarrels with each other simply cannot unite together. Therefore, at this moment, the shadows and the daimyo all stared at Naruto with grief and indignation. Only the Fire Country daimyo and the three generations were happy. How? What are you going to do? Looking at the crowd with a smile, Naruto couldn't help but ask again. Makoto and Sarah were very excited to see him playing with the five shadows and the great name, especially Makoto. Usually these great people are the existences that they need to look up to, but now they are shocked by a word from their man. Looking at Naruto's slightly curved mouth, Makoto simply fell in love with him in his heart, and admired him so much that he wanted to throw himself into his arms immediately. Cough cough. Three generations of Hokage coughed lightly, pulling everyone's thoughts back. Although Naruto's remarks are beneficial to Konoha, it also pushes Konoha to the knife edge of everyone. Although if it really becomes what Naruto said, it may be Konoha who will benefit in the end, but during this period, all beings in the ninja world will be suffering endlessly. He would rather make peace now than be engulfed in war again. He said, actually, Naruto means that we can no longer treat the current problems with the ideas of war. I think that after the war, the people of all countries, whether they are ninjas or civilians, all hope for peace. I also don't want to suffer in the war. So I hope everyone here can take a step back and bring peace to the ninja world for the time being. Quote. The remarks of the three generations seemed to resonate with everyone temporarily, but soon, their firm positions and interests made them wake up and realize that this is by no means so simple. War or peace, this is a matter that closely affects the interests of the country. How can you make such an easy decision? However, just when everyone was hesitating again, Naruto once again made a big announcement, and he said, seeing that you are still indecisive, why don't we make a bet? What? Everyone couldn't help but look up and asked in unison. The corner of Naruto's mouth twitched slightly. I will fight with you on behalf of Konoha village. I bet I can keep your lives here, and then lead Konoha village to conquer your dragonless country. How about that? Chapter 270 Battle Onoki. Naruto's words shocked everyone present once again. After being stunned for a while, Seiying's face showed an angry look. Third generation Tsuchikage slammed the table and said angrily, arrogant boy. If you have the ability, try this old man's Jinten particle style. After finishing speaking, the grumpy he directly aimed the hand seal at Naruto, and a pale white energy ball suddenly appeared in the palm of his hand. 3 Tsuchikage, don't mess around. At this moment, Third Raikage, who had personally experienced Naruto's unparalleled speed, stopped Tsuchikage from behind. Onoki had no choice but to withdraw his ninjutsu and hummed heavily, you who don't know the heights of the sky, don't underestimate the power of my shadow. Third generation Tsuchikage, don't say it anymore, he really has this kind of ability. Third generation Raikage sighed. Are you destroying your prestige? This doesn't look like your style. Onoki looked at the 3 generation Raikage, who was soft-spoken in surprise. It's not that I underestimate you. If he unfolds the speed, your Jinten particle style can't knock down his body at all. And your back may be exposed in front of him at any time. Hokage 3 generations hummed. Sometimes the combination of space ninjutsu and powerful taijutsu makes it difficult to capture even a Kage-level powerhouse. Yes, his speed is even more terrifying than Yellow Flash. Fourth Mizukage said lightly. You guys, is this your power as a shadow? I'm so disappointed. Onoki, who had never seen Naruto's power with his own eyes, never believed that Naruto was as strong as they said. The next moment, he floated in front of Naruto in the sky, suppressing his angry voice and said, "How about a fight with you, old man?" Naruto smiled. Can your opinion represent the whole? Onoki was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at the other people, and said lightly, "It seems that this meeting cannot continue, so, if I lose, I will take a step back on behalf of the village and fulfill the proposal of the third generation of Hokage. If I win now, how about this guy belong to our village?" Naruto sneered. This old Tsuchikage was really arrogant. Daimyo looked at each other in dismay, and the 3 generations of Hokage and other shadows also looked at each other, nodded slightly, but sighed inwardly. However, if Tsuchikage village can take a step back, it means that their own village can compete for more interests, so of course they will not stop the stupid behavior of the 3 generations of Tsuchikage. On the largest training ground in Konoha village, the outside world has been completely under martial law at this moment, and only the 5 shadows and the 5 daimyos can enter, as well as several elite guards of their own. In the arena, Naruto was wearing a white imperial robe, standing straight in the center with his arms folded over his chest. Opposite him, Tsuchikage's chubby figure was floating in the air. I will use Jinten particle style to destroy you in one fell swoop. There is no room for you to dodge. Onoki said coldly. Really? Are you really that confident in your Jinten particle style? Naruto smiled lightly. Outside the arena, the 5 daimyo and the 4 shadows sat on the high platform, watching the competition in the arena. Their faces were extremely serious. Sister Makoto, Naruto will win, right? Sarah asked Makoto next to him, looking at Naruto in the arena with concern. Makoto nodded. Naruto is so strong, how could he possibly lose? However, although she said that, she was still a little worried. After all, Jinten particle style of the 3rd generation Tsuchikage was heard to be more powerful than Kekkei Genkei, so I wonder if Naruto could handle it. What the hell is Onoki thinking? Even though he knows he can't win, he still wants to fight Naruto. The 3rd Hokage looked at the 2 in the field, his eyes twinkling. At this moment, Onoki used Jinten particle style directly on Naruto. A huge beam of energy blasted out from his hands, hitting Naruto's body. However, this kind of attack is not challenging for Naruto at all. Although Jinten particle style's destructive power is unparalleled, if the opponent is attacking from the front, it is still very easy for him to dodge. I saw Naruto's figure flashed, and the next moment, he avoided Jinten particle style and jumped high above Onoki, with 3 Hiraishin in his hands lacing towards his face. Onoki quickly hand-sealed with both hands, and instantly made a Doden Earth-style move, and a huge rock flew up on the ground, blocking Naruto's kunai at once, and flew towards Naruto. Naruto stretched out his hand, a Rasengan was already in his hand, and he pressed against the huge rock with a bang. Under the strong spiral force, the rock was torn apart and turned into pieces of rubble and rolled back. Jinten particle style, split detachment of the primitive world technique. At this moment, Onoki's voice suddenly recalled above Naruto's head. Naruto raised his head suddenly, and a huge beam of energy rushed straight down, drowning his body in an instant. Naruto! Sarah couldn't help screaming when she saw this. Makoto took her hand and motioned her to calmly watch. Sure enough, when the huge light beam dissipated, Onoki looked at the huge pothole he had punched out in the field, but his expression did not relax. On it. At this moment, the 3rd generation of Hokage, who was present in the off-court battle, was the first to discover where Naruto was. At the same time, Onoki also noticed Naruto's breath. He raised his head suddenly, but found that it was too late. Everyone only felt that a golden arc flashed, and with a bang, Onoki's body was already hit by Naruto. Flew out. Boom. His body slammed into the big pit, and the smoke and dust scattered all at once. That one just now was Shadow Clone. Naruto's figure fluttered to the ground, suddenly his eyes fell on the ground under his feet, and his body moved quickly to the side, and the next moment, another huge energy beam shot out from under the ground. Dodged again. Onoki's body came out of the ground, and the cheeks were swollen high, which was caused by Naruto's punch just now. Naruto. His perception is really amazingly sensitive. The third-generation Tsuchikage has absolutely nothing to do with him. Kazekage couldn't help sighing when he saw Naruto's extremely relaxed state. Onoki's Jinten particle style is really powerful. I don't know if this old man's lightning armor can withstand it. 3 generations of Raikage muttered. Damn, this guy's speed and perception are strong pervert. The old man's Jinten particle style can't hit him at all. At this moment, Onoki really realized the strength of this guy. The other party didn't use such a powerful ninjutsu at all, and he did his best. It seems that this is the gap. Chapter 271 Automatically Admit Defeat. While Onoki was still amazed at Naruto's perception and speed, Naruto attacked him. Tossed a few kunai again, and quickly hand-sealed. Kunai Shadow Clone Technique. When a large piece of kunai appeared in front of Onoki, Onoki knew something was wrong, and immediately summoned 4 tall earthen walls to surround him in the middle, blocking Naruto's overwhelming kunai. After one round of attacks failed, Naruto was not disappointed, because he had achieved his goal, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he watched the field being covered by Hiraishin Kuei in a large area. 3 generations of Hokage did not know that Naruto had been able to copy both Hiraishin kunai and the spatial coordinates, and it was a little puzzle to see Naruto suddenly resorting to this trick. In fact, if Naruto could cultivate the technique of Hiraishin to the 3rd stage and directly use perception to determine the spatial coordinates, Onoki would have already lost. However, in this case, Naruto has also occupied an absolute dominant position. Boom! A huge beam of light appeared from behind the dirt wall. Naruto's body jumped away again. Jinten's particle-style power shot into the air, and Onoki flew out from behind the dirt wall, looking at Naruto who was standing in front of him again. 3 generations of Tsuchikage, your attack is too single, so you can't beat me. Naruto smiled. Humph. Onoki snorted coldly. You who can only dodge, can't you really beat me? Naruto smiled slightly, and stopped talking. The next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared, leaving only a faint golden light that flickered away. Just as Onoki was about to release Jinten particle style from hand seal with both hands, Naruto had already appeared below him, and a rapidly spinning chakra ball in his hand was carrying extremely strong energy. Onoki was shocked. At this moment, he didn't expect Naruto to suddenly appear under him, and he was slightly surprised that it was too late to escape. Boom! A crisp sound. Naruto's Rasengan slammed into the chest of the 3rd generation Tsuchikage, and his body was blown upside down by the strong spiral energy. But in the next moment, Onoki's body immediately turned into a piece of rubble and fell. It's a substitute. Naruto turned his head and looked behind him, where Onoki was floating in a cold sweat, his eyes full of vigilance. Just now, if it wasn't for his rich experience, when he couldn't finish the Jinten particle style seal, he decisively used a substitute technique to escape. As this yellow flash, it's too fast. Onoki felt the horror of this speed for himself this time, and couldn't help but murmur. However, just after he finished expressing his emotion, a golden light flashed in front of him again. Naruto's figure appeared under his body again, and the Rasengan in his hand slammed into his body again. Onoki, who had already suffered a loss, hurriedly flew up into the sky, this time under extreme vigilance, thus avoiding another attack by Naruto. However, Naruto's blow failed. The Rasengan in his hand suddenly swelled, and a buzzing roar sounded throughout the audience in a moment. Futon, wind style, Rasenshuriken. Jinten particle style, split detachment of the primitive world technique. Onoki, who flew into the air, also took this opportunity to aim at Naruto below, and once again emitted a strong beam of energy. Rasenshuriken with one hand and threw it up to meet the beam. The huge wind-shaped energy ball collided with the beam instantly. After years of training, Naruto has been able to operate in a normal state. Throw the Rasenshuriken out. Boom! A huge roar sounded, and a dazzling white light emitted from the intersection of the two. A powerful whirlwind of energy attacked everything around, and almost the entire exercise field was surrounded. What a powerful technique! It can be compared to Onoki's Jinten particle style. Everyone present in the battle was shocked when they saw that Naruto had used such a powerful technique. How many powerful abilities does he have yet to show? 3 generations of Hokage couldn't help but sigh. The one of a kind Mokuden, wood style, the elusive Hiraishin, the taijutsu that is almost invisible, and the ninjutsu that is now as powerful as Jinten particle style. It is unimaginable to achieve such an achievement at such a young age. After the energy light in the scene dissipated, Onoki slowly flew down, came to Naruto, and watched him sigh. You are really strong. You are so strong that I can't beat you with all my strength. I admit defeat in this competition. There is no point in continuing the competition. Onoki's remarks immediately stunned a few people outside the venue. What the hell is Onoki doing? He gave up so quickly. He is someone who never admits defeat. 3 generations of Hokage couldn't help shouting. Naruto didn't expect him to admit defeat like this, and couldn't help but be stunned. Onoki ignored the surprised crowd, turned around and flew back to Saiing's side and said, I have tested his strength just now, and I am convinced. Iwagakure village, will take a step back from now on and will no longer participate in the war. Twinkle in the eyes of the 3rd generation, he looked at him and said, Onoki, it seems that you are not the kind of person who can't judge the situation. Onoki smiled lightly and left with a few guards. Seeing the back of his sudden departure, the 3 generations couldn't help but sigh. In fact, Onoki knew that he would not win Naruto, and he fought with him, just to give himself an explanation and find a reason to convince himself to give up the war. That's it. Because of his personality, he will never retreat without a fight. This battle with Naruto is equivalent to a test. As a result, he has already tested Naruto's strength, and he has really reached a level that he cannot compete with. To the point of, so he decisively abandoned the original plan. Naruto and everyone present were surprised by Onoki's sudden departure, but these politicians quickly figured out everything and agreed with Onoki's wise choice. Naruto was a little unhappy, because this fight made him unhappy at all. He was already a little helpless when he fought in such a small venue, and Onoki conceded defeat within a few minutes, and he still had a lot of forbearance. The tactics of the technique have not been displayed. Since Master Mokuden, wood style, and Hiraishin, Naruto has not encountered an enemy who can hurt him for a long time. This time, he finally had a chance to play against other people in the 5 Kage level, but he was disappointed in the end. Ending. Looking at the other 3 shadows, Naruto couldn't help but open his mouth and said, which one of you 3 would like to come down and fight with me again? Chapter 272 2 Girls' Reward. Kage, Hokage, Mizukage, all speechless. Looking at Naruto, who was full of fighting spirit in the field, they only felt powerless for a while. 3 generations of Hokage have experienced Naruto pervert's taijutsu, and he knows that he is not an opponent. The 4th generation of Kage and the 4th generation of Mizukage also suffered from Naruto before, and naturally they refused to be abused again. They shook their heads and sighed. Naruto, you were so majestic just now. Even the shadows of the 5 great ninja villages bowed their heads to you. After the 5 shadows meeting ended, Naruto and Makoto Sarah were walking down the street, and Sarah looked at him with admiration. Said. Makoto smiled lightly. Naruto's current strength has surpassed the level of Kage level. What a pervert. Yeah, you didn't see Sister Makoto, how distressed those shadows were when they left. They must be afraid of Naruto. I didn't expect Naruto to stun these big men with just one person. Yeah, Naruto is the hero who ended the war this time. Makoto smiled ambiguous. Sarah, we have to reward our hero. Sarah saw Makoto's ambiguous smile. She immediately thought of what happened that night, her face slightly yuhi, and she couldn't help spit. Makoto, if you want to reward him, just reward him, why tell me? Seeing the two women chattering non-stop, Naruto felt itchy, patted their buttocks with both hands, and said with a smile, I think it's better to reward me now. You want to be beautiful. The sensitive parts were attacked, and the two women couldn't help but feel angry and threw him a Byakugan. In the Konoha hotel, Naruto was lying comfortably on the bed, closing his eyes slightly and enjoying the pleasure brought by the two women. Sarah was lying on her chest. Her soft lips kissed her chest muscles over and over again, while Makoto got under the quilt and knelt between her legs and kept moving. The sky is bright and sunny outside, and the interior is already extremely desolate, lustful and confused. The two women did not want to be together, but because Naruto overpowered the heroes this time and brought about the peace of the ninja world, he who made such a great contribution, as long as he was a little soft and hard, the two women had to obey him obediently. Courtesy request. Until evening, Naruto returned to reality from the incomparable comfort. Looking at the kinky and messed up traces on the bed, I couldn't help shaking my head and smiling bitterly. But this is not surprising. With his strength reaching this level, a deep loneliness has arisen in his heart. This loneliness is combined with the regret of not being able to return to that world, constantly impacting his heart, and only indulging in something only then can he temporarily forget all his troubles. Before, he was running around in order to stop the war, but now the war has stopped, and apart from cultivating, he can only play and enjoy with the two girls. Phew! His stomach suddenly screamed, and Naruto, who hadn't eaten for a long time, couldn't help laughing bitterly. His body moved slightly, and just as he wanted to get up to eat something, the two girls had already woken up. So comfortable, Makoto stretched. Sarah also rubbed Naruto with her smooth long legs and yawned slightly. What time is it now? It's almost dinner time. Naruto laughed. Ah, it's so late. Naruto is so intense just now. I'm exhausted. Makoto also nodded and said, yeah, my waist is still sore. Okay, if you guys are tired, just take a rest here. I'm going to have something to eat first. Naruto said. Well, I'll go too. Sarah got up. Although I'm a little tired, it's not bad to take a walk with Naruto after dinner at night. When Makoto heard this, he was immediately attracted by Sarah's proposal, and nodded again and again. Then I'll go too. Sister Makoto, you occupied Naruto the most time just now, and you are so tired, you should rest here. I will walk with Naruto alone. Sarah laughed. HMPH, who told you to die in a few seconds? Of course I will participate in such a beautiful thing as a walk. Makoto couldn't help pinching the snow-white meatball on Sarah's chest. Sarah groaned in pain and reached out her hand to touch between Makoto's legs. Yeah, it's so itchy. Makoto was attacked and groaned before falling into Naruto's arms. Seeing the two women fighting happily, Naruto couldn't help but be speechless. After they made a fuss, Naruto swelled up again, and set up a tent with the quilt high. Seeing Naruto's strangeness, the two girls restrained a little. They didn't want to get out of bed by Naruto again. After a long time, the two women who had cleaned up everything, one on the left and one on the right, took Naruto's arm and came to the restaurant for dinner. At this time, the news that the Five Shadows Conference had confirmed the end of the war had spread throughout the village of Konoha, and people's faces were filled with joy. The three of Naruto were sitting in the corner eating dinner, chatting and laughing with each other, and the people around them cast envious glances at Naruto being able to eat with the two beauties. Of course they didn't know that Naruto had already played double with the two beauties and flew away, otherwise they would be jealous to death. At this moment, a few figures suddenly walked in outside the restaurant door. Naruto, who was joking with the two girls, was slightly startled, and when he sensed the familiar aura, he couldn't help but glance at Makoto. It seems that someone is coming, Naruto said suddenly. Both women are unknown. Finally, when those people came to Naruto's table, Makoto looked up and stood up hurriedly. Patriarch. Father. Sarah also looked up and saw the person who came. It was the second elder, the patriarch, Fugaku, and several Uchiha elites. She couldn't help but puff out her mouth, a dissatisfied look on her face. Sarah felt very unhappy about what happened yesterday. Although these people are Sister Makoto's father's clan companions, they don't think about Makoto's sister at all, they just keep forcing her to do things she doesn't want. Makoto, can you come out with me? We have something to tell you. The second elder showed a kind smile on his face. Makoto couldn't help but stunned. Father-sama. Seeing their expressions, Naruto flashed a strange expression on his face, but immediately smiled. Go, Makoto, we'll be here waiting for you. Naruto nodded the next moment. Thank you, Naruto. The second elder couldn't help but smiled at Naruto. Sarah opened her mouth wide and stared at the second elders with an unbelievable expression. No way, after a day, the attitude of these people has changed 180 degrees. Chapter 273 Family Consent. Few minutes later, Makoto returned with a cheerful look on his face. The first time she saw Naruto, she threw herself into his arms. What's the matter? So happy. Naruto, it's great. It's great. Father and the patriarch agreed with us. They also said they would hold a wedding for us. The smile on Makoto's face turned into a bright flower. Naruto smiled slightly, and he secretly thought that this was the case. Ever since the second elder and the patriarch walked in, he had almost noticed that there was no maliciousness in their chakra, and then the second elder smiled so kindly and smart to himself. For example, he immediately thought of a result. Originally, he was deeply disappointed by the stupidity of the Uchiha family, but this time they actually agreed to Makoto to marry him. Although I don't know why they changed their original intentions, in a word, they became smarter. In this regard, he is still very happy to see. However, compared to Makoto's happiness, Sarah on the side was a little depressed. After hearing that Makoto said that her father agreed with the two, she was also happy for her. But after hearing that the Uchiha family wanted to help Makoto and Naruto when people hold a wedding, their hearts are a little sour. Although the two women have served Naruto twice in the same bed, in some ways, the woman's heart is still very sensitive and wonderful. I really envy Sister Makoto, being recognized by everyone and having a happy wedding. Sarah said quietly. Makoto smiled, turned around and hugged Sarah's delicate body and said, Sarah, are you jealous? It's so sour. Humph. You're going to get married before Naruto and I, of course I quit. I knew Naruto first. Sarah pushed her away with an unhappy face. Hee, Sarah, you're not of marriageable age yet. Who said that? In our Roran, I could have found guardian knights at my age. Sarah argued. At this time, Naruto stepped in and hugged the two girls with a smile. Okay, don't fight. I have no plans to get married yet. The Uchiha clan actually made a decision for me, really. The two girls became anxious. Makoto exclaimed, Naruto, don't you want us? Now that the ninja world is at peace, why don't you want to get married? In fact, Sarah could vaguely understand Naruto's thoughts, and her mood gradually calmed down and looked at him silently. Naruto smiled slightly and patted the two women on the shoulders. You are all my women, of course I will be responsible for you to the end. Then why don't you want to accept the wedding? Makoto pressed. Naruto sighed slightly in his heart and remained silent. Makoto couldn't help panicking and shook his arm. Naruto. Sister Makoto. Sarah grabbed Makoto and shook her head slightly at her. Looking at Naruto with his head lowered and looking a little sad, Makoto felt a sense of being squeezed in his heart, and she was slightly taken aback when she saw Sarah's concerned expression. Naruto, are you hiding something from me? Sister Makoto, don't ask any more, I'll tell you later. Sarah shook her head slightly and looked at Naruto again. Is it all right? Naruto glanced at her, took a deep breath, and nodded. Okay, Makoto, some things are my fault. I shouldn't hide it from you. I'll tell you now, I hope you won't get excited after hearing it. Makoto. Naruto, stop joking. After listening to Naruto's words, Makoto couldn't help laughing. Even if you say that you were the reincarnation of the Six Paths Immortal, I believe it. How can there be such a strange thing? If you say that, don't you know me 20 years later? At that time, I will be your mother's generation. Naruto nodded. In fact, there was still a word in his heart that he didn't say. Your daughter was fucked by me. I don't know how she will react when she hears this. Anyway, Naruto doesn't say anything about killing him now. However, even though it was just these contents, Makoto was already shocked, and Naruto was helpless when she saw that she didn't believe her. However, it wasn't that Makoto didn't believe it, it was just that she suddenly couldn't accept it, and after bending over and laughing for a while, she stood up. Naruto, is everything you said true? Yes. Then can I ask you a few questions? Makoto said seriously. You must answer me. Naruto pondered for a while, then nodded. I don't want to ask you who I married in the next life, and I don't want to ask you about your story in that world. I just want to ask you one question. Will you leave here and return to that world? Makoto said faintly. Asked. Hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but lowered his head and was silent for a while, then looked up at her and said, I'm not sure about this, because I can't find a way to return to that world now. Hearing this, the two women clearly felt Naruto's gloomy emotions, and they couldn't help being silent. Suddenly, Makoto said, Naruto must have someone he loves very much in that world. Naruto nodded. Makoto couldn't help but feel a pain in her heart. She was not jealous because Naruto cared about others, but because Naruto had been struggling and suffering in his heart, but she didn't know all of this and couldn't understand his pain. Guilt. Although, all of this was because Naruto didn't confess to her, but at this time, she no longer blamed him. She could imagine, suddenly coming from one world to another world, completely breaking with the original person. The feeling of being isolated from the world is more desperate than being abandoned by a family, by a father, and by a companion. Naruto, however, has been bravely persevering, facing with a sunny smile every day, infecting everyone and saving the people of this world, but he himself has no one to save. At this moment, Makoto thought that he would not have so much pain if he could return to the original world. She would rather be missed than Naruto would stay and suffer that kind of pain. Compared to the world that has lived for more than 10 years, this world that has only stayed for more than a month must be very insignificant. Chapter 274 Brute. After dinner, the three Naruto walked slowly along the river and came to the residence of the Uchiha clan. Naruto, you and Sarah wait here for a while, I'll tell my father when I get home, and pack some things by the way. I'll be leaving for Rorin tomorrow. Makoto stopped and said to the two of them. After learning that Naruto is the 6th generation of Hokage in the later generations and has a deep bond with this village, Makoto can imagine that the more Naruto stays in this familiar place now, the more he will be hooked. Missing the original world in his heart. So, after discussion, Makoto decided to follow Sarah and Naruto back to Rorin, planning to spend the next time with Naruto and Sarah. In Rorin, she and Sarah will work to relieve Naruto's pain, even if they leave their hometown. Makoto's house. The second elder stared at his daughter with wide eyes in disbelief. What did you say? You're leaving Konoha with him? Yes, father, please help your daughter. Makoto said with a firm nod. The second elder stared at her for a long time. So, you will rarely return to Konoha in the future, right? Makoto nodded slightly. Hey, it's not impossible for you to leave with him. It's just that your mother will miss you very much. You must come back to see her more. With a sigh, the second elder finally agreed to Makoto's proposal and held the wedding. Things, of course, can no longer be carried out. In fact, after the 3 generations and others came over last night, the Uchiha clan's views on this matter have already changed. An existence as powerful as Naruto helps the ninja world to establish peace and order, and also solves the dilemma that Konoha is about to face by being besieged by many parties. It can be said that he is Konoha's benefactor, and from the 3 generations and others to Naruto. In their attitude, they could also see that in the hearts of the 3 generations of Konoha executives, Naruto played an extremely important role. And the Uchiha family had some relationship with Naruto because of Makoto. This was originally a very bad thing, but after realizing the incomparable admiration attitude of Sandai and others towards Naruto, this became a good thing. A matter of great benefit to the Uchiha family. Perhaps, the status of the Uchiha family in Konoha will be elevated to a higher level. Therefore, the second elder, the patriarch and others finally agreed with Naruto and Makoto. With a trace of reluctance, Makoto left the home where he had stayed for 20 years. When she left, a figure stood silently at the courtyard wall, watching the back of Makoto who was slowly leaving, and a trace of madness flashed on his face. Walking through the street corner, the reluctance in Makoto's heart was slowly replaced by the expectation of being with Naruto in the future. Compared with Naruto leaving his entire world, it is so insignificant that he is only temporarily leaving this price. Naruto, I must make you happy with all my heart. Makoto couldn't help but whisper silently. At this moment, a low male voice suddenly sounded beside her. Makoto, are you really so committed to him? Makoto was suddenly startled and turned his head hastily, only to see that Fugaku was only half a step away from him, and he almost bumped into him. She hurriedly took a step back and said slightly startled, Fugaku, why are you here? It's impossible for me and you. I like Naruto, so don't waste your time for me. Hearing her heartless words, Fugaku flashed a look of pain on his face, and said, Makoto, I heard just now that you are leaving your family and leaving this village, and I will never see you again, you know. I have always liked you since I was a child, and my affection for you has never changed. Even if you are now in the arms of others, as long as you do not leave the village, it is enough for me to see you every day. Why even take away my little wish? Makoto didn't expect Fugaku to be so infatuated with herself, but she has long been in love with Naruto, and of course she couldn't accept his words, so she could only apologize. Sorry, Fugaku, you will find something better than me. Girls. When she was done, she turned to leave. However, the next moment Fugaku flashed and suddenly stopped in front of Makoto. The expression on his face became extremely frenzied. No, Makoto, I won't let you go. Fugaku, don't do this, how can you force emotional matters? Makoto frowned slightly and shook his head. No, I'll never let you out of here tonight. The thought of you going into that guy's arms makes me want to go crazy. Fugaku clutched his head with both hands, his face full of pain and hideousness. Makoto had never seen him like this before, and he couldn't help but be a little scared at this moment, afraid that he might do something unexpected. Fugaku, I'm not worthy of you. You are the leader of the family in the future and have a bright future. Why would you be so rude for me? Makoto comforted. Fugaku raised his head, his eyes were full of bloodshot after struggling. It seemed that he was a little low and terrifying at this time. He suddenly whispered, Makoto, why don't you promise me? For once, tonight, I only want you, and I won't dwell on you from now on. How? Promise me because I am so infatuated with you. I only want you once is enough. He walked up step by step, approaching Makoto. The corners of his mouth became wider and wider, and the eyes looking at Makoto became more and more unscrupulous. The desire in his chest was pouring out like a river overturned, but the words in his mouth seemed to be begging, and is threatening. When Makoto heard him say this, he couldn't help but get angry and said, Uchiha Fugaku. How can you think like this? I only like Naruto, and I will never agree to you. Look at the fact that we grew up together. For the sake of it, I don't blame you this time, but I hope you don't have another time. She really did not expect that Fugaku would have such thoughts of herself, and she was extremely angry for a while. Hey, Uchiha Makoto, stop pretending. You bastard has already been fucked by him, so what if you let me fuck it once? At this moment, Fugaku suddenly laughed strangely, and his body exuded a powerful his aura approached Makoto step by step. Beast! Makoto didn't expect Fugaku to say such a thing. At this moment, her heart was full of anger and deep disappointment. She grew up with such a person. She just felt sick. She snorted suddenly. Uchiha Fugaku, I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Get out of here now. I don't want to see you again. Chapter 275 Crippling Fugaku. However, once a person's desire and hope arise, it is like a flame that burns and turns into a raging fire, and it is difficult to extinguish it all. At this time, hearing Makoto's scolding voice, Fugaku only felt an extremely strong desire and impulse in his heart. Ha ha ha, I'm a beast. Well, then I'll see what you look like when you get fucked by a beast like me. Fugaku grinned and threw himself at Makoto's body. Makoto's pretty face was frosty, and he was extremely angry. At this time, he didn't care about his companions at all, so he pulled out his kunai and went up to him. Although Fugaku was overwhelmed by desire, but under the guidance of this desire, his skills became extraordinarily agile. Makoto threw a kunai stab at his vital point, but he easily avoided it. The next moment, he jumped up with a swish, suddenly appeared behind Makoto, and suddenly grabbed Makoto's chest from behind with his arms in a circle. Go away! Makoto angrily scolded, seeing his disgusting big hand hitting his chest, kicked back and kicked Fugaku's chest, and Fugaku was kicked back a few steps. Makoto could retract his legs, however, Fugaku grabbed her heels with both hands like a wild beast. Makoto only felt sick all over her body. Even if the soles of her body's dirtiest feet were touched by his hand, she felt uncomfortable for a while. At this time, her heels were firmly restrained, and she couldn't help screaming. Let me go. However, before she could push Fugaku back again, Fugaku raised her legs violently, overturning her whole body to the ground. Makoto fell to the ground, her heart was full of anger, facing Fugaku's ugly face, she couldn't help shouting Naruto's name in her heart. Suddenly, a golden light flashed in front of her, and a very familiar and tall figure appeared in front of her instantly, blocking Fugaku's progress. It's Naruto. He is finally here. Fortunately, the technique I set on Makoto can feel her strong mood swings, otherwise I would have been succeeded by you. Naruto stood there quietly, looking at the man coldly. Fugaku, who was staring at himself in astonishment. Naruto! Makoto couldn't help shouting, his voice extremely surprised. Naruto snorted at Fugaku, turned to help her up, put his arms around her slender waist, and comforted her softly. Sorry, Makoto, for keeping you waiting. It's okay Naruto, as long as you come, I don't want to see him again, let's go. Makoto leaned gently in his arms, her face gradually calmed down, with Naruto around, she felt nothing worry no more. Fugaku looked jealously at Makoto's intoxicated expression lying in Naruto's arms. The jealousy in his heart was about to set him on fire, but at this moment, he could only look at the woman he had always wanted being hugged by someone else. Suddenly, a monstrous killing intent rose in his heart. Facing Naruto and Makoto, who were hugging each other, he suddenly took out a handful of kunai, and then roared and waved at the place where the two were. Come over. Ah, be careful, Naruto. Makoto, who was leaning in his arms, saw the fleeting cold light, and when he came back to his senses, he found that the light was in front of the two of them. At this time, Naruto, who had been paying attention to Fugaku for a long time, couldn't help but evoke a contemptuous arc at the corner of his mouth. Out a hand, Fugaku's kunai wrist suddenly fell into his hand. Gently squeezed, a cry of pain came, and the kunai fell to the ground, and Fugaku's face was full of pain. Are you trying to kill us? Naruto asked indifferently. At this moment, the killing intent in his heart has been suppressed. Even if he is the father of Sayu in that world, Makoto is his own woman in this world. No other men are allowed to interfere, so even if he is Uchiha Fugaku, Naruto is already determined to kill. Since you want to kill us, that just gives me a reason to kill you even more. Naruto ignored his screams. His murderous aura and that powerful chakra burst out suddenly, and instantly enveloped Fugaku's whole body. Fugaku only felt that his breath was suffocating, his legs were soft and he almost knelt down, but he had lost his mind. After this stimulation, he suddenly became more crazy, and his other empty hand suddenly pulled out the short knife behind him. Slashed at the two Naruto. However, how could Naruto be hit so easily? Just as Fugaku drew his knife, Naruto's legs were already raised. Boom! Immediately after a shadow of a leg flashed by, Fugaku's chest suddenly sank, and his body suddenly flew backwards like a cannonball. Boom! The next moment, his body directly knocked over a courtyard wall, and fell weakly into the ruins, spitting out blood, and even broke 3 ribs on his chest. The figure flashed, and Naruto instantly appeared in front of Fugaku. Before he could react, he kicked him between his legs again. Click! With the sound of a broken pelvis, Fugaku's body was blasted out again. The intense pain of the lower body being destroyed instantly made him faint, and before he lost consciousness, his mind was full of despair. Naruto didn't see the result, he turned around and disappeared with Makoto. In fact, he originally wanted to kill him directly, but after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was too cheap to kill him, and the woman who dared to touch his own would definitely make his life worse than death. After a long time, the Uchiha people who came to hear the news dug out the dying Fugaku from the ruins, but his chest was fractured, and the blood between his legs was blurred. Second 1010 lit up. Naruto and the two women were already on the road outside Kikyo City. Makoto was very disappointed and angry about what happened to Fugaku last night. Later, with Sarah's consolation and persuasion, her mood gradually improved. Being angry for that kind of person is definitely a waste of emotion, so this morning, she has recovered. Relaxed, packed up and Naruto left Konoha village. As for Fugaku, Konoha will find out sooner or later that Naruto did it, but what does it matter? For them, offending Naruto for one of Uchiha's future patriarchs was something that only 3 generations would be able to do. So, Naruto doesn't have to care about what Konoha will be held accountable for next. Chapter 276 King. A few days later, the 3 Naruto came to the city of Rorin. Back here again, Naruto couldn't help feeling a little emotional in his heart. Looking at the country that was almost in ruins by the war, Naruto sighed slightly. It will take a lot of manpower and material resources to repair this. But that's fine, at least in the future I have goals to do. War is such a disgusting thing. This beautiful and prosperous place has become so decadent in a blink of an eye. Makoto looked around and saw a large tower that fell, and debris scattered everywhere. The stone ruins could not help but sigh. Sarah bit her lower lip slightly, watching this prosperous country created by her mother herself become like this. She felt extremely uncomfortable. A gust of breeze blew slowly, and the street was deserted, with only a few rats and wild cats scurrying around, making the place even more dilapidated. Naruto stretched his arms around Sarah's slender waist, stroked her soft yui hair, and comforted softly, "Rorin only lost these buildings. Sarah, your people's hearts have not been lost. Your people are still waiting for you. As for the recall, I believe that in a short time, a tower will be rebuilt here, and the glory of Rorin will be restored." Quote. Naruto, thank you. Sarah couldn't help but raised her head slightly and looked at him with tears in her eyes. It's nice to have you by my side. Naruto smiled slightly. Okay, now is not the time to sigh. Let's gather the only remaining people in the city first, and then try to contact the original people, and if necessary, let the people of other countries come and live here. Yeah, Sarah nodded heavily. Another month has passed. Most of Rorin's people have returned to the country one after another, and the construction of Rorin has also entered the right track. Standing on the top of the tower, looking at the thriving Rorin, Naruto exhaled softly. Days, apart from having fun with Sarah Makoto, he did not let go of his cultivation, and his perception of the power of nature has become more proficient. Standing quietly on the top of the tower, Naruto slowly closed his eyes, surrounded by endless forces of nature gathered in his body. In an instant, his body exuded a golden light, black runes continued to appear all over his body. The powerful force made Naruto feel like he was floating, and the range of his perception became infinitely broad. Through these natural forces, he could even detect the breath of ninjas far away in the village of Konoha. This mode is really easy to use. Compared with the original Spell Mark mode and the Sage mode in the original book, it has stronger power and a wider range of perception. And this mode seems to have room for development. It is already so powerful before it is fully mastered. If you can fully understand it. Naruto's mouth showed a touch of expectation. Maybe it would really be like a god, right? Then name it Natural Mode. The next moment, the Natural Mode dissipated, and Naruto's figure disappeared on the spire. In the room inside the tower, the two Sarah women were still lying on the large soft bed. Due to the tossing last night, the two women were still soft and weak. Naruto appeared and glanced at the two sleeping women, smiled slightly, and walked out of the room again. With nothing to do, he came to the corridor and looked at the figure in labor below with a bit of boredom. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on the street below, which made him stunned for a moment. Chikuden, Scorch-style, messenger, Yi King. When he saw that familiar figure, Naruto immediately remembered the battle outside Sandin village. How did she get back to Rorin? Naruto couldn't help but wonder, did she have a mission to come to Rorin to see Sarah? Or maybe the Sand Ninja village sent her to investigate something. Thinking of this, his figure flashed slightly and immediately disappeared into the corridor. The next moment, a figure flashed in front of Yi King who was walking, and Naruto had already appeared in front of her. Yi King was slightly startled and hurriedly took a half step back. When he saw that it was Naruto, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Why are you here? Naruto smiled slightly. I still want to ask you this. Humph. Yi King snorted and suddenly said, I'm just passing by, why are you here? Are you following me? I didn't follow you, I just happened to meet you. Yi King squinted at him for a while, and suddenly a smile appeared on his face. Then I'm so lucky, I didn't expect to encounter a great hero of the ninja world in this strange country. Your tone doesn't seem to be honored at all, is it because of that? Naruto said depressedly. Yi King curled his lips lightly. I don't dare to criticize the way the hero does things, it was indeed my fault at that time. Then why do you still look unhappy? My character is like this, but I don't have to give him a good look for a guy who tramples on the dignity of a village. Yi King glanced at him, turned and left the place. Naruto couldn't help shaking his head and laughing when he looked at her. This woman was so serious and stingy. Although the way she threatened Kazekage at the time was very detrimental to the dignity of a country, in the end the ninja world returned to peace. That's enough, I didn't expect her to care so much. For those who couldn't understand herself, Naruto didn't need to waste her words anymore. I wanted to remind her to be careful if she had a mission to go to Kurigakure village in the future, but she didn't want to talk about it now. With a slight smile, Naruto also turned and left the place. Wait. At this moment, Yi King suddenly stopped Naruto. What's wrong? Naruto turned his head and looked at Yi King in front of him. In fact, Yi King was very beautiful. Although the natural conditions in Sharon village were poor, the quality of the beauties born there was very high. Yi King in front of him was very beautiful. Wearing a black halter top, tight shorts, and tightly wrapped white bandages around her waist, she looked even more curvaceous against the backdrop of her huge breasts. At this moment, Yi Kingjung looked at Naruto with a displeased expression. What were you laughing at just now? No laughing. Naruto spread his hands. HMPH, do you have nothing to say and admit your mistake? Yi King said lightly, or are you laughing at me? Chapter 277 Sneak Attack. I don't mean to laugh at you, I just don't want to continue talking to people who don't understand what I'm doing. Naruto said lightly. Yi King's pretty face was slightly angry when he heard this. You. Isn't that mocking me? HMPH, are you kidding me that I don't understand the mind of a strong man like you? I really can't understand this. After a pause, Yi King's voice suddenly became excited. Do you know that because of your relationship, the reputation of the village has been greatly affected, and now the number of missions distributed by various countries has become very small, and because of the end of the war, the original what we can achieve on the front line has also been forced to give up, and now the village is under pressure from all sides in order to negotiate peace. Do you understand these things? Quote. After Yi King said excitedly, Naruto couldn't help being stunned for a while. He really didn't think about these issues. All he cared about was whether the war in the ninja world was over, and some specific details were left to the village to handle. As for what was going on in it, of course he didn't know and wouldn't care. In the end, the reason why Yi King was unhappy with himself was because of problems in the village. Naruto smiled. Well, even if I didn't think about these issues, at least there is no war like before, isn't it? Compared with the struggle of life and death a few days ago, now everyone should not have to worry about these issues anymore. Humph. Yi King agreed, but for some reason he still felt unhappy, as if he had the urge to hit someone when he saw his smiling face. Thinking about everything so easily, and possessing the power to despise anyone's domineering, these things are very disgusting to her. However, in her heart, she actually had a deep envy for his state. Because compared with Naruto, although she has Kekkei Genkei, as a genius and the object of everyone's yearning, her actions must conform to the hero image in everyone's mind, and the pressure she is under on weekdays is also extraordinarily large. The pressure comes not only from the expectations of the villagers, but also from the envy of colleagues and the expectations of senior management. And Naruto, who violated the rules and did whatever she wanted, made her see a completely different concept of life from her own. It seems that you are not an unreasonable person. Seeing the change in Yi King's expression, Naruto smiled slightly. Yi King glared at him slightly, then walked around him and walked forward. Fuck you, I have a task to leave first, I am too lazy to talk to you. Naruto touched his nose and said, then please oh yes, let me remind you, if the top management of the village asks you to go to Kurigakure village to do errands, you have to be careful. Yi King turned his head sharply and frowned. What do you mean? I just want you to be careful not to be used by others. The village in your heart is not all great and righteous. No matter where you are, there will be a dark side. Naruto smiled slightly. What do you know? Yi King looked at him with a smile, and said with a blank face, don't give me a chance. That's all, if you believe me, just extend your hand to me. Naruto didn't want to reveal more about the future plot, he smiled. Naruto's words filled Yi King with suspicion, because his mission this time happened to be sent to him by the elders to Kurigakure village. According to Naruto's words, could this mission be something else? For a while, she couldn't help but froze in place. Forget it, looking at you, you won't believe me at all. Naruto shook his head and prepared to leave. At this time, Yi King, who heard him speak, finally came to his senses and reached out to grab Naruto's arm. Wait, I'm willing to believe you. Bai Shengsheng stretched out his palm in front of Naruto, and Yi King stared at him seriously. The corner of Naruto's mouth twitched slightly, and he reached out and pressed it against her jade-like palm. The touch is gentle and smooth, and it doesn't look like a ninja who has been fighting for a long time. Naruto can't help but feel a ripple in his heart. Yuhi imperceptibly, in the palm of his hand, a complex rune mark had appeared, and it was faintly disappearing. She looked up at Naruto and asked, what is this? You'll find out when the time comes. Naruto deliberately sold a pass, probably because he was unhappy to see her tugging. He didn't tell her the specific purpose. Anyway, if she was in danger, he would be able to do it on his own. Sensed. Yi King screamed in anger, but he regained his composure and said lightly, I hope it wasn't something you used to harm me. Naruto smiled lightly. Next, Yi King walked for a while in the city. Naruto had nothing to do, so he hung out with her, chatting and bickering with each other. It wasn't so boring anymore. Finally, Yi King, who had lunch, left Roran and headed for the mission. Looking at the palm of her hand, there seemed to be a touch of Naruto's warmth there. Yi King couldn't help showing a smile on his face. That guy wasn't really that annoying. After talking for a long time, she found that he was still a very considerate man. I really misunderstood him a bit before I came here. 2 days later, Yi King came to the land of water. Because of Naruto's words, she seemed to be thinking about something at this time. Kurigakure village through the valley, but at this time she felt a strange breath. This is a dangerous breath. If it wasn't for Naruto's words, she was full of vigilance, she would never notice this. Stepping into the valley slowly, a thick fog gradually rises, and there is no chakra in the thick fog. However, she was still cautious. It seemed that there was always a feeling of being stared at behind her. Maybe she was suspicious. She took a deep breath and walked forward as smoothly as possible. However, the more she went into the valley, the more she could feel the dangerous aura getting stronger and stronger, and at this time, the white fog had already obscured the entire line of sight in front of her. She, who had long been vigilant in her heart, realized that this was not the ninjutsu Kurigakure technique that Kurigakure village was good at. But because of this, she was more cautious. Because although he said he didn't trust Naruto before, he actually accepted his reminder in his heart. Chapter 278 Fear. The fog was getting thicker and thicker, and gradually surrounded the entire valley. Yi King could only see 3 meters in front of him and 1 meter. Although being shrouded in fog all the year round is a feature of the land of water, at this moment, Yi King has already raised 10,000 cautions in his heart. Suddenly, there was a slight air fluctuation, and the ability to catch danger, which was constantly honed in the war, immediately made her aware that there seemed to be movement behind her. Kai. The next moment, she suddenly stepped forward, and her figure suddenly leaned forward. A sharp dim light flashed past her behind. Immediately afterwards, Yi King instantly hand-sealed with both hands, and a large ball of hot and bright flames rose in his hands, and threw it out behind him. Huh! A man's low and surprised whisper came, and Yi King suddenly turned around to see the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him. Sure enough, there is a conspiracy. Yi King's face was suddenly shocked. Looking at the surprised Kurigakure ninja in front of him, he exclaimed, "Why did you attack me?" The ninja didn't seem to think that his silent killing technique would be avoided by Yi King, and after a moment of surprise, he laughed. "You are the victim sent by your village, of course we have to accept it as ordered." After speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared in the thick fog. At the same time, countless sounds of breaking the air suddenly came from all directions in the air, and Yi King's expression changed slightly. I finally realized how true Naruto's words were. Are you a victim sent by the village? Why? Why does the village do this? And why did Naruto know his danger? At this moment, Yi King was not only shocked and angry, but also felt extremely doubtful. However, the reality can no longer allow her to think more, and those voices of breaking the air are already close to her ears. At this moment, a faint golden light suddenly flashed through the white fog, and at this moment, countless clanging clangs came, followed by countless sounds of kunai landing. Yi King was shocked again. However, before she could realize what happened, suddenly there was a gust of wind in the valley, and the strength of the wind almost knocked her body out. Fortunately, she used chakra to stick to the ground in time, which saved her from being hit. Blown away. It took a while for the gust of wind to whistle, and the valley gradually calmed down, but the thick fog had all dissipated. When Yi King saw the scene in front of him, he couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. This. Kurigakure standing on the ground around her. At this time, they seemed to have just recovered from the strong wind. When they found that the thick fog around them had completely disappeared, they all turned their attention to it. Put it on Yi King. At this moment, Yi King seemed to have fallen into the bottom of the boundless ice cellar all of a sudden. His heart was cold. These Kurigakure village ninjas obviously came to take their names, but their mission was only to come to Kurigakure village to negotiate. Yes, when they got the quest before, the elders also told themselves that this quest Kurigakure village would not embarrass themselves, the only thing to pay attention to is to prevent people from other villages from destroying it. But at this time, the large group of Kurigakure village ninjas standing in front of her, as well as what the Kurigakure said just now, finally made her understand that she was just a pitiful pawn of the elders and was ruthlessly abandoned. Shikuden, Scorch Style, Ninja Yi King. Die. At this moment, the man who had attacked just now appeared and walked towards her slowly. Yi King's heart was full of sadness, and his face turned into a monstrous grief and anger. It's not that easy to kill me. Ha ha ha, today you are doomed. As a hero of the Sand Ninja Village, a female ninja who has made countless exploits, was given to us as a victim by your own village, and you don't know anything about it. It's so sad. That's it. The Kurigakure ninja laughed. Yi King's heart was gradually disintegrated by these bursts of ridicule, and her disappointment and hatred for the village gradually occupied her whole heart. Unexpectedly, I made countless contributions to the village, but in the end I became the victim of the village. Is this the so-called village? Is this the so-called high-level decision? It was so funny. Naruto, so you were right. Don't worry about the face of these so-called villages. Don't care about the ideas of the so-called high-level people. As long as you feel satisfied in your heart, why should you care about the opinions of so many others? Yi King, you are such a stupid woman. She couldn't help raising her palm, looking at the long-disappeared rune in her palm. A smile of understanding finally appeared on her face. Naruto, you were right. Oh, do you finally understand now? At this moment, Naruto's voice sounded from behind her, and at the same time, a warm palm rested on her shoulder, making her whole body tremble slightly. Ming, Naruto. Yi King turned his head to look at Naruto in disbelief. The unwillingness, anger, and hatred in his eyes suddenly dissipated at this moment, and all that remained was a look of relief and hope. It's you. At this moment, the group of Kurigakure ninjas exclaimed when they saw the figure of Naruto who suddenly appeared. Everyone, long time no see. Naruto waved to them and greeted them with a smile. Seeing the smile on his face, a look of fear suddenly appeared on the faces of the group of Kurigakure ninjas. Evil, the devil's smile. The devil is here again. They all screamed, and their bodies trembled slightly. The ninja who attacked and laughed at Yi King before stepped back with fear on his face. Their minds could not help but recall the scene when Naruto, the evil star, appeared in the village of Kurigakure. The fourth-generation Mizukage-sama couldn't match him even after he turned into a beast. At that time, after the elites of the whole village attacked together, the result was that the whole army was annihilated and lying at his feet. That kind of invincible and powerful image was deeply rooted, imprinted in the minds of everyone present at the time. And the ninjas who came to besiege Yi King today were the same ninjas who were beaten by Naruto and were powerless to fight back. At this moment, there is only one thought in their minds. Escape. Escape the sight of this demon and return to the village. Do not. Even going back to the village is useless. Hey, it looks like you guys are very good. A group of people bully a weak woman, then I'll teach you what you can do. Naruto stepped forward, pulled Yi King behind him, and swept away with a faint smile. A glance at everyone. Chapter 279 Roran's Life. Retreat. Hurry up. Kurigakure, who took the lead, waved his hand abruptly at the next moment and shouted. In an instant, the dozens of people around threw several smoke bombs in front of them, and the figures jumped back. In the blink of an eye, after the smoke in the scene dissipated, Yi King stared at the empty valley and couldn't help being stunned. Actually, I was scared away. Before Naruto made a move, this group of people actually retreated. They just left? Yi King asked dumbly. Naruto smiled slightly. Maybe it's still hiding somewhere around waiting for the chance to attack us. Yi King was startled and hurriedly searched around, but she stopped immediately, with an angry look on her face. You are playing with me. Haha, you look very smart and calm, but in fact you are sometimes slow to respond. Naruto laughed. Bastard, even if you save me, you can't insult me like this. Yi King angrily punched his body, but Naruto easily avoided it. Stop for me. Yi King refused to admit defeat and kept chasing after him, but how could he catch up with Naruto's speed? The two chased and fled, and soon came to the outside of the valley. After he stopped fighting, Yi King calmed down, stood behind him and said softly, "Naruto, thank you." Naruto's mouth twitched slightly. "What are your plans now?" Yi King's expression darkened slightly when he heard this, and a trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. "I don't want to go back to that village anymore." Naruto said lightly, "But you were born there since you were a child. There is everything you have, glory, friends, relatives. Those have nothing to do with me anymore. From the moment just now, I'm already dead, and I'm no longer Yi King, the messenger of Shikuden, scorched style, from Sand Ninja Village," she said with a sad expression. Naruto turned around and looked at the tears that gradually flowed down her face, and sighed in her heart. No matter who it was, the village she grew up with was betrayed to another country as a sacrifice. Such a disappointing blow is enough to make people feel hopeless. "If there is nowhere to go, come to Rorin," Naruto said suddenly. "Rorin? Is that where we met that day?" Yi King was slightly taken aback. There you can let go of your ninja identity, let go of all your glory and the fetters of the village, and you can live according to what you want," Naruto said slowly. "Is it true what you said?" Yi King murmured, an infinite yearning for this kind of life in his mind. Naruto stretched out his hand and smiled and said, "You can live there for a while. There is no ninja village, no war, and little contact with the outside world. You don't have to worry about any danger from the outside world." He said this because he believed that as long as he was in Rorin, Rorin would not be attacked by any country and his strength was sufficient to protect the whole country. And under the supervision of him and Sarah, there will never be any darkness in the country. It can be said that this is the life Naruto intends to live in this time and space. In a closed and beautiful prosperous country, I come to live with my own woman, and occasionally I get bored and go to the outside world to travel, simple and true happiness. Do you also live there? Seeing Naruto's outstretched hand, Yi King involuntarily reached for it, and when he held his warm hand slightly, her heart beat unsatisfactorily. For the first time in her life, because of a man was flustered. Naruto nodded, and the next moment, the two of them disappeared together in a flash of golden light. In the village of Kurigakure, the ninjas who escaped and returned are now reporting to the fourth generation. Hearing this, the fourth generation sighed deeply. It is already his kindness that you can escape and come back smoothly. With his strength, if you want to kill you, even if you are in the ends of the earth, there is nothing you can do. Lord Fourth, do we really have nothing to do with him? The ninjas asked. Nonsense. If the ninja world has a way to deal with him, we won't be so suffocated. Konoha Village. 3 generations of Hokage came to the hospital and looked at Fugaku, who was still in a coma lying on the bed, with a helpless look on his face. Beside him, the patriarch of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku's father, was standing there with a sad face, his eyes flickering at his miserable son. The Fugaku incident should be considered an accident. Sandai sighed slightly. Patriarch Uchiha was silent for a while. In fact, through the investigation these days, he has found the culprit who hurt his son. It is the Naruto who took away his daughter-in-law. However, after knowing it was Naruto, he fell even more into despair, because this was destined to become an unreturnable hatred. And the attitude of the 3 generations of Hokage at this time also let him know the slim hope of revenge. 3 days later, in the Tower of Rorin, Naruto was sitting on the bed silently practicing the power of nature. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, and a figure walked in slowly. Naruto opened his eyes, saw the figure in front of him and smiled lightly. Yi King, are you still used to living here? Yi King walked gently beside him, holding a teapot in his hand, walked over and made a cup of tea for him, smiled slightly. This place is very nice, people are very friendly, Sarah and Makoto are also very easy to get along. I didn't expect it's all thanks to you that I can be friends with the ninjas of Konoha and the queen of a country. Naruto took a sip, looked at Yi King with a relaxed smile on his face, and felt relieved. It seemed that she had come out of the despair and sadness of being betrayed by the village. Just then, two more figures came in. It was Sarah and Makoto. "Sister Yi King, this is your home from now on, we are all your companions." Sarah stepped forward and said with a smile. Makoto also came over and patted Yi King on the shoulder. "Before, our two villages have been hostile, but here we no longer have our own positions to say. You are you, I am me, you are no longer Sharen the village's Shikuden, scorched-style messenger Yi King, and I am no longer an elite ninja of the Uchiha clan in Konoha." Yi King couldn't help showing a moved look on her face. During the 3 days here, she saw the enthusiasm of the Rorin people, felt the democracy of this country, and experienced the peace and tranquility here. All of this made her begin to forget her hatred and resentment towards that village, and her heart gradually became peaceful and happy. Chapter 280 Dragon Power Reactions. Unconsciously, Naruto has spent more than 2 months in this world. In these 2 months, he has done too many things to bring about peace in the ninja world, and there is no tragedy of Kakashi Obito. There is no scene of people complaining under the constant war. It can be said that Naruto has almost become a savior-like existence in this world, and has become a godlike figure in the minds of everyone in the shinobi world. And after the establishment of peace, every time the ninja village talked about Naruto's deeds, it would be regarded as a legend, or a miracle. If Namikaze Minato's performance on the battlefield is the origin of the name, Yellow Flash, then Naruto's pioneering work should be called Golden Miracle. And this miracle has disappeared from the world of ninja at this time, and everyone only knows that he has an extraordinary relationship with Konoha, but no one can confirm whether he is in Konoha at this time. Because of Naruto, Konoha's reputation has soared, and the major shinobi villages will no longer dare to be arrogant about it. Even if Naruto is not in Konoha village, his name and his deeds are enough to shock everyone. In the city of Rorin, Naruto stood on the top of the tower, looking up at the sky. Under the breeze of Shirakumo in the blue sky, the white imperial robe on his body rattled, as if he was the only one in the world. After standing still for a long time, he suddenly murmured while feeling the power of nature around him. "There seems to be some kind of power nearby echoing me. Is that the dragon vein?" He was slightly startled. He knew that the underground of Rorin City contained the power of dragon veins, which only Queen Sarah could unlock, but more than 2 months ago, this power had been shut down by Sarah. Unable to sense. However, since he became more and more familiar with the power of nature, the power in the ground seems to be able to sense it. The next moment, his figure disappeared in place with a swoosh. Somewhere in the basement of Rorin, where layers of martial law and closed dragon veins have been opened and closed, Naruto's figure quietly emerged there. Seeing the strange circles of runes on the ground, Naruto couldn't help but reached out and touched it lightly. However, his body could not help but tremble slightly. "What's the situation? Why is the power of the dragon veins reacting to me?" Naruto murmured. Just when he touched the rune just now, a faint power instantly spread to his body, and this power, which Naruto would never admit wrong, was the power of the dragon veins. Suddenly, Naruto's face showed a look of surprise. "Yes. Rather than saying that this is the power of the dragon veins, it is better to say that this is the natural power hidden underground in this world. The endless chakra that ordinary people understand is actually just the natural force naturally generated by this land." This is clearest to Naruto, who has been exposed to the power of nature. However, although Naruto has now been able to understand the power of nature and absorb it for his own use, he always feels that the current state is not enough, because the energy he can use is only a part of it. To be precise, he can only match and combine this part of the source power with his own chakra, just like using Sage Mode at this time to generate a power that is more powerful than other Sage art, but this state is still far away. Far from reaching the level of infinite chakra. Compared to Kyuubi Ninetales' chakra, Naruto thinks that his current self is not bad, but Kyuubi Ninetales' chakra recovery speed is even stronger than his own. And the power of this dragon vein is, strictly speaking, one of the powers of natural origin. If it is explained in this way, it is not surprising that this power can react to Naruto himself. It's just that although he could sense this power and also felt the faint desire in it, Naruto did not take any measures, because he was traversing because of the power of this dragon vein, and now he is in his own without fully understanding the power of nature's source. He did not dare to try it easily. However, just when he was about to leave, the rune on the ground suddenly emitted a white light, and Naruto was slightly startled. He had already felt the joy of the dragon vein, and it seemed that he had found his mother's child. Generally, it sends a desire to its own side. At the same time, Sarah, who was in the tower, suddenly frowned. "What's wrong, Sarah?" Makoto, who was beside her, asked suspiciously. "It seems that something is wrong. The power of the dragon veins seems to be on the verge of being shaken." "I have clearly closed it," Sarah murmured. "The power of dragon veins. What is that?" Makoto couldn't help asking, not knowing these things. Sarah always felt an uneasy feeling in her heart, as if something major was about to happen, and before she had time to answer Makoto's words, she pulled her up and called, "Sister Makoto, come with me, let's go to the Dragon Pulse switch." He hurriedly opened the door and went out, and happened to meet Yi Kang in the corridor, who was leisurely watching the scenery. "Sarah, Makoto, where are you going?" Makoto hurriedly turned around and said, "It seems that something is wrong with the dragon veins, let's go and have a look." When the three girls came to the place where the dragon veins were, they saw an astonishing scene. Naruto was standing at the eyes of the dragon veins, and the runes under his feet radiated dazzling white light, almost covering his entire body. "Are submerged in it." "Naruto," Sarah shouted, "what's going on? Why did the dragon vein suddenly open, and what are you doing?" "I feel the power of the dragon vein is being." Boom! At this moment, the dragon vein suddenly burst out with even more powerful power, and an incomparably powerful energy whirlwind rose out of nowhere, causing Sarah, Makoto, and Yi Kang to retreat. Yi Kang and Makoto had never seen the power of the dragon veins, and both looked at Naruto with surprised expressions. And Naruto, who is in the center of the energy storm, has a completely different feeling. He only felt an incomparably powerful energy pouring into his body. This energy seemed to be endless, as if it was about to burst himself. At this moment, Cubit Ninetails in the body suddenly roared, "Stinky boy, hurry up and use your natural source power to guide this power, or you will be charged up. I don't want to be with you. Die."